After Leo and Elia rendezvoused with Captain Raymonds at the designated spot, the scattered members of the Night Ravens were swiftly rounded up by the closing net of NHBD officers. The department took custody of the firearms and the bodies. Leo had no intention of getting involved in the cleanup. He glanced at Tilly, who conjured a teleportation spell, whisking the group back to the living room of the old house. It was deep into the night. As a magical light faded, Helena, clad in pajamas, shuffled out, stifling a yawn. "Leo, why are you back so late?" she began, then blinked. Why is everyone here?" Helena realized the returning party was larger than expected, and beyond that, everyone smelled strange. The bizarre odor instantly jolted her awake. She pinched her small nose in disgust and looked quizzically at Leo. "Leo, didn't you go to the exposition? Why do you smell like that?" She remembered him attending an industrial fair, not some kind of canned fish festival. The delicious canned food Professor Evelyn had made them try back in the Northern Territories was an experience Helena would never forget, and this was a disturbingly similar scent. It's a long story. Leo subconsciously sniffed his own sleeve, thinking that with Tilly's magical protection, he shouldn't have been tainted. Ophelia shot a glance at the captured Elia before hurrying toward her room. "I'm changing. Wait for me before you interrogate this woman." Helena finally noticed the stiff, unfamiliar woman, and her guard went up. "Who is she?" "Leo, why did you bring another woman home?" She walked over, scrutinizing her from head to toe. The woman met her gaze, her own pair of large, sky-blue eyes welcoming. A slow smile spread across her lips. "Little Helena, you've grown up, and you've become so beautiful," Elia said, her smile gentle. "You are." The voice was unfamiliar, but the warm tone struck a chord of strange recognition in Helena. Elia's gaze shifted with difficulty, taking in the old house with a nostalgic expression. "It hasn't changed much, though the furniture is far more luxurious now. Ophelia's doing, I presume." She turned back to Leo. "By the way, is my old room still there? I'll just stay there tonight. If it's a mess, I can clean it myself." "You certainly make yourself at home, don't you?" Tilly sneered. "You're our prisoner. Show some damn respect." As she spoke, she waved a hand, and a wooden chair floated into the center of the room. She shoved Elia onto it, then used ropes to truss her up securely. "Does it need to be quite so tight?" Elia glanced at Tilly. "I'm getting the feeling you're settling a personal score." "Oh, we're just getting started," Tilly said with a sinister, triumphant smile. "The Sea of Siston has tried to wipe out our order of magical arcanists time and time again. Now you show up in New Haven causing all this trouble. You think I let you off easy? You're finished, Elia. I'm going to make you beg for an end that will never come." "Oh," Elia asked coolly. "And what, precisely, are you going to do to me?" Tilly turned to Helena and commanded, "Go get the tools from the basement. And I want every single model of the bone saws." "Oh, okay," Helena nodded, then added, "Miss Tilly, should I bring the anesthetic?" "Of course not." Tilly's grin was chilling. "I'm not just going to inflict physical pain. I'm going to burn her very soul. I'll make her cry and beg until she confesses every last detail of her conspiracy. This isn't over until she breaks." Helena recoiled, terrified by this version of Tilly. A palpable malevolence radiated from her, casting a chill over the entire living room. Elia, however, remained unfazed. She looked at Leo with a faint smile. "She's still the same, isn't she? I always said that corrupting magic affects the mind. I tried so hard to convince her to see the error of her ways, but after all these years, she's only been more deeply corrupted. She's a lost cause. Who's corrupt and who's righteous?" Leo shot back, his voice dripping with scorn. "Everything you're doing will bring chaos to New Haven, war and death to Wigner. How can you say that with a straight face? Right now, you're the last person who has any right to criticize Tilly." He knew Elia had always despised mages or wizards ever since the wars in the Central Kingdoms. Her home had been destroyed by a dark sorcerer, and her adoptive mother, a kind nun, had died in the flames. But what she was planning now, how was it any different from what that sorcerer had done? Leo stared at her. "It's not too late to wake up. Order your people to cease their activities in New Haven. End this pointless war. If you do that, there will still be a place for you in this house. We'll even help you achieve what you truly want." To his surprise, his words seemed to flip a switch. Elia's gaze instantly turned distant, her eyes becoming unervingly empty. "No, my wish is to see the world bathed in holy light. I will bring order to this world." Leo frowned, sensing an unnerving, divine aura emanating from her. "A pawn of the light," Tilly scoffed impatiently. Seeing that Helena hadn't returned, she manifested a barbed leather whip in her hand. Looks like you need to be taught a lesson today. Let's see if you can keep up this little meltdown. Wait. Leo sensed something was deeply wrong with Ilia's state. He stepped forward and asked tentatively, Ilia, is this really you right now? Of course, it's me, Ilia replied, looking at Leo with the same gentle smile as before. Leo's frown deepened, his confusion growing. Then let me ask you this, he continued. If you truly want to bathe the world in holy light, are you also prepared to see the deaths of this country's innocents as a necessary step? That's not the woman I once knew. The Ilia of the past was kind and gentle. She couldn't bear to see people suffering on their journey and wish for an end to all wars. It is a necessary price, Ilia said, her gaze firm. Only light can dispel darkness. A moment of cruelty and sacrifice in exchange for eternal order and happiness. Isn't that a simple calculation? Leo, I thought you, of all people, would understand. What's your plan? Leo, try to lead her on. The true source of this world's tragedy is a power beyond your comprehension. I don't believe an age ruled by the church is the future. The Sea of Sistun already proved that 1,000 years ago. All the world's tragedies stem from a lack of power, Ilia stated. The second god of light managed to seal most of the old ones without the faith of the entire world. What he couldn't do, I will. Because I have heard the call of the light. The light? Leo asked, suspicious. Who is the light? What is it? What did it tell you? The light is my future self. I will become the third god of light, Ilia said softly. Help me, Leo. As I've said before, the sea has a place for you. I need you to help me manage the church, to help me govern this country. Leo, don't listen to her silver-tongued lies. Tilly's hand shot out, erupting in a column of black flame. Become a god? You. Under Tilly's control, Ilia's body went rigid. The black flames seared her soul, drawing a pained groan from her lips. Leo, she managed to whisper. Believe me, what I say is true. It was because I was powerless that I had to watch you disappear before my very eyes 4 years ago. I hated my weakness. I hated this dark, corrupted world. I exiled myself. Now, I found the solution. This is the only chance, Leo. Help me, she shrieked in agony. But even then, she fought to maintain her consciousness, trying to persuade Leo, unwilling to relinquish control of the Sistun envoy's body. She's not lying. Ophelia, having changed her clothes, walked slowly into the room. All eyes turned to her. Tilly snorted. I doubt your methods will work on her. And what good are yours doing? Ophelia gracefully sat on the sofa, observing the interrogation like a spectator at a play. You used to be even more single-minded than she is. There's no point in reasoning with someone this far gone. What we need to do now is dismantle her plans, piece by piece, and ensure her conspiracy fails. Tilly and Leo approached her. Tilly lowered her voice. So, what's your idea? Can she be contained? Ophelia asked Leo. Leo shook his head. No. Ilia was possessing the body of a Sistun envoy, and that envoy wasn't listed as a target in his system. There wasn't even an affinity meter. This was clearly part of Ilia's calculation. She knew about his ability to control others, which was why she'd never once appeared in her own body, from Thornwood Castle until now. I figured as much. Ophelia thought for a moment. Then a smirk played on her lips. But I have other ways. Even the most resolute person has emotions. And where there are emotions, there are cracks. She smiled and walked forward, looking Ilia directly in the eyes. Even if you've seized control of the sea, secretly infiltrated numerous countries, and formed a public anti-Wigner coalition, you know in your heart that you can't possibly shake the Wigner Empire, can you? Ilia narrowed her eyes. She didn't respond, but every micro-expression was registered by Ophelia. Ophelia's smile widened. So, you have to attack from within. Although my father has cracked down on anomalies within the Empire, their numbers are still far greater here than in other nations under the sea's control. They hate humanity. They hate the Empire. So you plan to use that, just as you gave the Night Ravens the Codex of Ghouls. The various anomaly resistance groups are all just pawns in your game, aren't they? Ilia stared at her, her face a blank mask. But Ophelia already had her answer. She turned back to Leo and Tilly with a triumphant look. Trapped here, Ilia had nowhere to run. Even without speaking, Ophelia could decipher her entire plan from simple yes or no reactions. Not bad, Tilly admitted, a thrill in her voice. She could feel Ilia's defeat drawing near. Ophelia once again prodded at Ilia's thoughts. But pawns are just pawns, not exactly a winning hand. Even if they get lucky and summon their respective greater entities, it's still just one part of your plan, right? You wouldn't stake everything on a roll of the dice. She continued, so, on the day they succeed in creating chaos, they'll draw away the defensive forces. That gives you an opening. Let me think. Of the three masters who personally protect my father, which one is your man? Ophelia's smile was predatory. Based on the precedents set by the traitor Bishop Lawrence, the current Pope, Adrian, is the most likely candidate. Wouldn't you say? You really are something. Adrian only took office 2 years ago. You planted your agent that far back. After saying this, her expression was mocking, but her eyes were locked on Elia's face, watching for the slightest change. She needed an answer. Her deduction was based on thin evidence, and Elia's reaction was paramount. To Ophelia's astonishment, Elia showed no reaction at all, not a single crack in her facade. She just stared back, her gaze empty and indifferent. What's going on? Ophelia, refusing to believe it, asked several more questions. But Elia's response was the same each time. She seemed to have shed all emotion, becoming completely invulnerable. Something's wrong. How is this possible? Ophelia slumped back onto the sofa, completely deflated. The soul-searing flame doesn't seem to work anymore, either. It's like she can't feel pain. Tilly returned, looking even more perplexed than Ophelia. Did she already leave? Tilly muttered to herself. Or maybe she destroyed the envoy's soul, and what I'm looking at is just an empty shell. It's neither, Leo said, watching Elia. Her eyes were fixed on him. When he moved to a different seat, her gaze followed. He'd had a strange feeling from the start, as if this cold, detached version of her was a separate consciousness from the original Elia. When he shared his thought, Ophelia frowned. Multiple personalities? Wait, I have another theory. Tilly recounted the details of her fight with Elia on the snowy mountain. Thinking about it now, she can switch between these two consciousnesses seamlessly. This detached one feels more like divinity, Leo said softly. The divinity was the symbol of Elia's power, but now it had become a defense mechanism. Well, that's a problem. Ophelia's expression soured. How can you shake divinity itself? If she stays like this, we'll never get anything out of her. Leo was just as frustrated. It was like Elia had found a massive loophole. First, they tried to capture the envoy for information, but Elia's divine descent hijacked her soul. Then, he thought about containing her, but her real body wasn't here. Now, they tried to trick her, but her divine persona was emotionless. This was exactly the kind of move he'd expect from someone who knew his abilities inside and out. She had likely anticipated these vulnerabilities from the beginning, like she was exploiting a bug in a game. So what do we do now? Ophelia looked to Leo. Leo didn't answer. He walked quietly to stand before Elia. He had an idea. Since they had this much intel, reloading to a point before the sewer operation and finding the other underground groups Elia controlled was a viable option. He would also have the element of surprise in rooting out the C's other moles. Back then, Elia would have been completely unaware. But just as he was about to activate the ability, the hollow-eyed Elia spoke, her voice flat. A mysterious ability to foresee, to know the path of the future. Or perhaps, like the key to the gate, the power to directly change the past. I don't know what you possess, but either way, it's a waste of your effort. She stared at Leo coolly. If I dared to come here, it's because I came fully prepared. Leo, please don't disappoint me further. In this state, I will not hesitate to take your life. I will kill anyone who stands in the way of the light's arrival. Oh, is that so? Leo looked her in the eye, abandoning the idea of reloading. Then you're bound to be disappointed, he said with a smirk. Not only will you fail to kill me, but you'll have to watch as your precious light never dawns, and you'll see the day your life's work, the sea of Sistun, crumbles to dust. Early the next morning, when Leo came into the living room, he found Ophelia curled up on the sofa, yawning repeatedly. You've been up all night. Leo walked over and saw that she was now sporting the same dark circles under her eyes as Tilly. Don't even ask. Ophelia glanced at Elia, still bound to the chair in the middle of the room. She kept that same damn expression on her face all night. Didn't respond to a single question. Tilly joined them, shrugging helplessly. We got nothing. About what I expected, Leo said. You two should get some rest. It won't do any good to break yourselves while she gets exactly what she wants. How am I supposed to sleep now? Ophelia muttered. The exposition is in 3 days. The more she thought about it, the more agitated she became. No, I have to go persuade my father. I don't care if he scolds me. I can't let that woman succeed, no matter what. Leo nodded. He probably won't scold you. You're looking out for him, after all. And for what I hear, he's a man who values his life. Tilly's gaze shifted to Elia. So what now? What do we do with her? Leo looked at Elia, who met his gaze with her vacant stare. Give me time, Leo said in a low voice. She'll slip up eventually. As the three of them were talking, Helena emerged from her room, rubbing her eyes sleepily. Morning, Leo, she mumbled, drifting toward the kitchen like a sleepwalker. I'll go make breakfast. What should we have today? Don't worry about it. Helena, Leo called out. Helena stopped, looking back at him in confusion. I'm taking you out for something good today, Leo said with a smile. Helena blinked. Then her face lit up with a brilliant smile. Yay! Leo walked over to Elia and started to untie her ropes. You're coming with us. Oh, and Ophelia, Tilly, you two aren't invited. Elia watched him with a blank expression, not moving an inch even as the ropes fell away. Ophelia and Tilly exchanged a look. Well, I guess I'll go catch up on some sleep. Ophelia yawned. And I should probably head to the palace for a bit. Tilly nodded. I'm going to the backyard to keep working on that machine. Oh, right, Leo, this is for you. She handed him a magical, invisible rope, just in case Elia tried to escape. After a few more instructions, Leo and Helena escorted Elia out of the house. Once the three of them were out of sight, Ophelia and Tilly looked at each other again. With a silent, shared understanding, they began to sneakily follow behind Leo. Half an hour later, Leo led them to a lively street food stall in the West End. They sat at an outdoor table, and soon, steaming black coffee, fried fish, and freshly baked bread were served. Helena had no issue with the fried fish that Leo was already sick of. She opened her mouth wide and chomped off the crispy head, smacked her lips, and then took a huge bite of bread, eating with pure delight. Every time Leo watched Helena eat, it was like she was devouring the most exquisite delicacy in the world, and it never failed to whet his own appetite. Helena eats with such gusto, Elia said, watching her with a gentle smile. She's just like she used to be, enjoying every kind of food. It's making me a little hungry. That's right. Leo took a couple of bites of fish and passed a portion to Elia. It's because she went hungry when she was little, always on the run, never getting a hot meal. So now that she's grown up, she's making up for it with a vengeance. Yes, I can understand that. Elia nodded. Her own childhood had been difficult. She'd had her own share of wandering, just like Helena, though her life had improved dramatically after being taken in by the church. Despite her being an anomaly, the kind nun had never once thought of turning her away. She had not only shaped Elia's character, but also instilled in her a devout faith. Thinking of this, Elia looked at the eating Helena and asked with a smile, Helena, you enjoy this life, don't you? MHM, Helena said, looking up. I love it. I get to be with Leo every day, and I get to eat delicious food. It's a great life. But what if I told you that this life will end? Elia countered, because one day, you will lose your brother. You will lose everything. Helena immediately grew tense. Why? The old seals are weakening, Elia said gravely. One by one, they will reawaken. The day they descend upon this world will be the end of days. No, Helena grabbed onto Leo, shaking her head fiercely. I'll get stronger. I'll protect my brother. Elia gave a helpless smile. You're such a naive girl. These are beings you cannot possibly fight. You will die, and your brother will die. Seeing Helena's fear, Elia felt a sense of satisfaction. She continued, only light can dispel the darkness. Therefore, you and your brother should support me. It's the only thing you can do. Oh, Helena looked at her, then back at Leo, confused. Leo, is that true? Leo stuffed a piece of fried fish in her mouth. Keep eating. Ignore her. But the fish had lost its flavor for Helena. She began to think seriously, feeling that she really ought to do something. Leo's eyes flickered from the pensive Helena to Elia. What's the point of manipulating her? She can't change my mind. You should be using that brainwashing of yours on me. But it isn't a lie. I am correct, Elia said earnestly. You should be helping me walk toward that bright future, not stopping me. By becoming an obstacle, what's the difference between you and a pawn of the dark gods? Leo rolled his eyes. Everyone always said they were the ones in the right. He was getting tired of hearing it. Though, to be fair, pawn of the dark gods. In a way, wasn't he kind of exactly that? He looked at Elia. The light she pursued was about order. He wondered what kind of face she'd make if she knew his power was rooted in chaos. Returning to their topic, it was Leo's turn to counterattack. The future. He mulled over the word, then let out a thoughtful laugh. The future you envision is exactly what I hope for, too. Oh, is that so? Elia was unconvinced. Leo figured she wouldn't believe him, so he told her about the promise he'd made with Tilly. A beautiful, new world. Elia blinked, a look of surprise and delight spreading across her face. That's wonderful. Leo, are you willing to help me now? Leo nodded with a smile. Of course, but not if it means you have to sacrifice yourself to do it. What? Elia's brow furrowed. Yep. She stared into Leo's eyes, and his expression was dead serious. You know, she asked. Leo hadn't expected to be right, but he kept his face neutral. As you absorb the power of faith, your divine side will grow stronger and stronger, won't it? Elia nodded slowly. Leo continued. But is that you still you? The day you become a true god, the original, you will essentially be dead, right? A flicker of confusion crossed Elia's eyes. That's true. As my power grows, my emotions have become colder, and I find it harder and harder to control my other side. Watching her confusion, Leo spoke softly. Like I said, the real you will die. But I don't want you to die. So, let me save you one more time. Save me again? Yes, just like that time before. That time before. The bustling street corner blurred as Elia was pulled into a memory, one she would never forget. In her youth, perhaps due to her devout faith, she had awakened her talent for divine arts at a young age. Her exceptional abilities led to her being promoted to a healing priestess as an adult, an unprecedented move. She was assigned to assist a regional bishop. For someone of her standing, that was the highest she could ever hope to climb. She had thought she would spend her entire life in that remote city in a small central kingdom, living out her days in peace. But in her very first year as a priestess, war broke out. To call it a war was an overstatement. It was just a few insignificant little countries bickering. In the grand tapestry of the continent's history, it wouldn't even warrant a single sentence. But it changed her life forever. The dark sorcerers hired by both sides brought ruin to innocent people. She saw villages burn, towns turn to rubble. She heard the agonizing cries of the people as fertile land was corroded into black waste. Her adoptive mother, that kind nun, died in the chaos. It was the darkest period of her life. From that moment on, she developed a deep-seated hatred for all magic users, as well as the puppet masters behind the conflict, Wigner and Norscowl. Norscowl was the nation where the Sea of Sistun was based. This fact shook her faith in the god of light to its very core. She no longer followed the cowardly bishop, nor did she retreat with them to the holy mountain. She would stay to help her people, to protect her home. She armed herself with a massive flail used for threshing grain and, through sheer courage and brute strength, drove off bandits who were looting the area. She used her divine arts to heal the wounded. So many came seeking her aid that the village became impassable. Day and night she fought and healed, growing thinner and weaker, running on fumes. Her darkest moment came when the terrifying dark sorcerer reappeared. She thought she was offering her final prayer. And so, she would never forget the image, sunlight piercing through the clouds, falling upon him as he reached out his hand to her. For a moment, she thought she had found her light. The man who saved her, Leo, must be an envoy sent by the gods. That's what she believed, and everything that followed seemed to confirm it. They foiled conspiracies, solved mysteries lurking in the shadows, and she grew stronger by his side. She came to see the enigmatic Leo as the world's savior, just as the god of light had prophesied. The day of redemption was truly at hand. But all that hope had been shattered 4 years ago. Elia's eyes regained their focus. She looked at Leo with a complex expression. Thank you, but I no longer need your salvation. This is my choice and the path I am destined to walk. Oh, Leo nodded. Then rest in peace. Elia blinked, taken aback by his flat reaction. A wicked grin spread across Leo's face. After you're gone, the rest of us will continue living our happy lives in the old house. You can go peacefully, and don't you be curious about what kind of fun activities we get up to every night. Elia stared at Leo, speechless. Why would I be curious about that? You could do whatever you want. Do you think I envy them? Lies. In a private residence on a street corner, Ophelia let out a cold snort. Tilly, observing Elia's expression in a magical projection, nodded repeatedly. I knew it. She's definitely not as indifferent as she's pretending to be. She's just putting on a brave face, Ophelia said coolly. I bet she's incredibly envious. While they whispered, in the living room of the house, a husband and wife stared dumbfounded at the tens of thousands of dollars on their coffee table, then looked at each other. When the two women had forced their way in and dropped a windfall in their laps, the couple thought they were dreaming. Strange things happen every year, but this year takes the cake. The husband muttered, stuffing wads of cash into a bag. Maybe we should head to the countryside tomorrow and lay low. I've got a bad feeling about New Haven. This is New Haven, where the king lives. What could possibly happen? His wife grumbled. Let's go. Trust me on this. I got a hunch. Shit's about to hit the fan. Fine. His wife reluctantly agreed. Back at the food stall, Elia pretended not to care and went back to eating. Helena couldn't contain her curiosity. She leaned closer to Leo. Leo, what kind of fun activities? Can I join? Leo nodded. Of course. We can all do it tonight. Helena nodded eagerly. What? Elia nearly choked. She stared at Leo in shock. Even Helena? She's just a child. Leo looked at her, baffled. What? Is there a rule against playing poker at night? You're really overstepping. Elia put her head in her hands, completely exasperated. Her emotions had been more volatile in this single day than in the entire past year. That was him, all right. But seriously, what if I insist on stopping you? Leo asked. No one can stop me. If you stand in my way, I will kill you without hesitation. Elia said, her expression instantly shifting, her eyes becoming cold and empty once more. TCH. Leo looked at her scornfully. She was like a turtle retreating into its shell, refusing to face him when it really mattered. As the three of them were eating, Captain Raymond's rushed over. Finally found you. Leo, stop eating. We've got another situation. Leo glanced at the captain, wondering how the man always managed to track him down. From his harried appearance, it was clearly another major case. Leo stood up and said to Elia, You're coming too. You're taking me along on an investigation? Elia switched back to her normal mode, a look of confusion on her face. I told you, Leo said with a grin. I'm going to make you watch your grand conspiracy fall apart, step by step. He would find a crack in her armor eventually. Then he'd see if she could maintain this detached composure. As expected, the case Captain Raymond had brought to Leo was related to an anomaly resistance group. He hurried Leo, Elia, and Helena into his car and sped off toward the east side of the city. Leo had assumed the case was within New Haven, but to his surprise, the captain drove them to Kent, a smaller city just east of the capital. This series of cases concerns the security of the capital and His Majesty himself, so the Central Department is handling them directly. The local precincts are required to cooperate with us, Raymond's explained. Leo nodded, looking out the window. The buildings here were much shorter, but the streets were still bustling. As a satellite city within the capital sphere, its primary function was to supply resources. In the car, the captain briefed them. The church in downtown Kent had been attacked. An underground anomaly group had tried to free their imprisoned brethren, and in the process of escaping, they had summoned something that caused widespread chaos. After getting out of the car, Leo was met with a scene of utter devastation. The church had been burned to the ground, and half the buildings on the surrounding streets had collapsed, as if a massive earthquake had struck. Leo surveyed the area. Bodies were laid out haphazardly in front of the church. The local police were assisting church personnel in rescuing the wounded. The air was filled with agonized cries. The screech of a carriage pulling to a stop sounded behind them. Ophelia and Tilly stepped out and joined Leo's group. Ophelia's gaze took in the disaster zone, then shifted to Elia standing behind Leo. Is this mortar handiwork? Elia's face remained a mask. Tilly's eyes were fixed on a massive carcass in the distance, where BSI agents were using incinerators to dispose of it. After a moment of thought, she said with certainty, a creature that lives underground and causes earthquakes. A drill worm. Leo looked over. The dead monster was long, like a giant serpent, but its head was a swollen, squid-like mass covered in countless tentacles for burrowing. This creature, now killed by the BSI, was the source of the catastrophe. He glanced back at Elia. This has her fingerprints all over it. She had been supplying these resistance groups with dark codices for their summoning rituals. Last time it was a ghoul that failed to appear. This time, it was a drill worm. Just how many of these groups has the sea secretly contacted? Leo frowned. Elia's actions were like handing out rifles to Wigner's enemies. And these weren't simple rifles. Each of these monsters posed a significant threat to New Haven. Elia stared at Leo coolly, still not answering. Leo grabbed her chin, forcing her to look at the street. Look, take a good look at what you've caused. Elia's eyes rested on the mangled, bloody corpses. For a fleeting moment, a hint of shock registered, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Helena spotted a little girl squatting beside the body of a nun, staring blankly. She had clearly cried herself out. Her small face was streaked with tears and grime. Seeing the lonely child, Helena was reminded of her own past. Any thoughts? Leo asked Elia. An unfortunate incident. Innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire, Elia replied. Leo stared at her. If you persist, this is only the beginning. The number of innocent dead and wounded will only grow to an unimaginable degree. Elia's expression remained unchanged. Leo, I know what you're trying to do. You want me to see this, to provoke an emotional response, to trigger my empathy. But I've already told you. A moment of cruelty and sacrifice will be exchanged for eternal order and happiness. You will not shake my will on this matter. She looked at him impassively. If you cannot bear to see this, then you should help me. Together, we can minimize the losses and the price. I have always had high hopes for you. In the future, when the light dispels the darkness. All right, here we go again. Leo had no interest in hearing her sermon. He had nothing left to say to this brick wall. He said coldly, I want to talk to her. Not you. Let the real Elia face me. She is me, and I am her, Elia stated flatly. Helena suddenly spoke up. The old priestess Elia wasn't like this. Elia looked at her. Helena stole a glance at Leo, wanting to help her brother. Her eyes darted around, and she adopted a wistful, nostalgic tone. The old priestess Elia was very gentle, like a warm older sister. She wanted us to stop fighting with each other, for us to become a real family. She was also very kind and always willing to help. She couldn't bear to see any suffering in the world. Sigh. Elia cut her off. Helena, if you try to learn your brother's talent for manipulation, I suggest you give up. Helena was stunned into silence by her cold tone, her cheeks puffing out in frustration. She said no more. It's okay, Helena. Don't try to persuade her. Leo stroked Helena's head, then shot a look at Elia. She's a lost cause. Let her go find her damn light. Leo led Helena toward Captain Raymond's, where the police and church members were gathered around something. Tilly followed, smiling as she ruffled Helena's hair. Helena, you're so good now. Already trying to help your brother with his troubles. Helena giggled, and with everyone comforting her, her earlier frustration vanished completely. Ophelia followed behind them, looking annoyed. I told you, there's no point talking to a block of wood. We're just wasting our time. Leo, let's not speak to her again. I think you're just jealous again. Tilly muttered. TCH, who's jealous of her? I suggest you try that lie detector on yourself. Elia watched the family walk ahead, talking and laughing, and her gaze faltered once more. A faint shimmer passed through her eyes as her human side resurfaced, her expression softening. Once upon a time, she had been one of them. She would quietly watch them bicker and laugh, a genuine smile on her face. But now, there was no longer a place for her there. Elia smiled bitterly. There's no going back. There's no going back. The feeling of loss was fleeting. It vanished in an instant, and the cold, empty gaze returned to her face. As Leo and the others approached, Captain Raymond's quickly put on a respectful smile. Your Highness. His colleagues and the church personnel finally realized they were in the presence of the Empire's fifth princess and hurried to offer their greetings. At ease, Ophelia nodded curtly, then asked, Captain Raymond's, what's the situation? The opposition group caused a great number of casualties, primarily at the Kent Church, Raymond's reported. BSI agents have killed the monster that caused the earthquake and captured 3 of the perpetrators. However, all 3 of them committed suicide by poison. At this, Raymond's leaned inconspiratorially toward Leo. He shot a wary glance at Tilly, then whispered, Leo, do you think you could ask Miss Tilly to help out again? Like she did with that gang member we interrogated? Of course, Tilly said directly. Take me to them. But let me be clear, if their brains are completely dead, there's nothing I can do. Captain Raymond's didn't dare look at Tilly for more than a second, nodding vigorously. Standing this close to the most wanted witch on the continent, it was impossible not to be nervous. But he also knew that since she was with Leo, and with the 5th princess present, his worries were probably unfounded. So, don't ask what you shouldn't ask. That was the creed of a survivor like Captain Raymond's. While Tilly interrogated the resistance members, Leo stood by and waited. Just then, a heavily injured man, covered in blood, was pulled from the nearby rubble. Church healers immediately began treatment. Leo watched as 2 of them used their divine arts, a faint white glow covering the wound on the man's abdomen. The healing spell went on for a long time, until beads of sweat formed on the priest's foreheads. But after all that effort, the wound had only healed slightly. It was too severe, and blood continued to seep out. The man's breathing grew fainter. At this rate, he was going to bleed to death. Leo looked at the 2 helpless priests, thinking to himself, if this divine magic were even a little bit useful, wouldn't be this useless. Had the local church's skills really deteriorated this badly? The 2 priests began to grumble in low voices. This magic is getting less effective by the day. I'm telling you, the god of light is never coming back. But I heard those guys in the Eastern Sea have incredibly powerful divine arts. Something about that Sanus's reforms. Shush, don't say that out loud. Leo committed their conversation to memory and stepped forward. He wanted to try out his new skill. Elchigar School of Healing, an ancient, primal nature magic collected and improved by the Magic Association. When cast, it accelerates wound healing, stops bleeding. The two priests looked at Leo in confusion, about to tell the bystander to move along. But when Leo placed his hand gently on the victim's abdomen, their eyes went wide. A white light, far brighter than theirs, flared to life. In just 30 seconds, the massive wound healed at a visible rate. The man's breathing stabilized, and the danger of bleeding out was completely gone. The church personnel gathered around in astonishment, assuming Leo was an expert sent from New Haven. Because his divine art was so staggeringly efficient, Leo found himself moonlighting as a church healer, participating in the post-disaster triage. As more and more wounded were brought in, the local church ran out of priests. Leo saw a man in a white robe who had been passing by hesitate for a moment before rushing over to help. "I am Riel, Bishop of the Diocese of Latran to the west." The middle-aged man introduced himself with a smile. After lending Leo a hand, he began treating another victim nearby. His divine art was far superior to the other two priests. A warm, gentle white light glowed, and the patient under his care was healed quickly, at a speed that rivaled, if not surpassed, Leo's own. As they worked, Leo struck up a conversation. This Bishop Riel had just been promoted and was on his way to a meeting in New Haven. He had been passing through Kent when he saw the disaster and, out of a sense of duty, decided to help. "Your skill with divine arts is quite impressive," Bishop Riel remarked curiously. "Are you a high-ranking cleric of the Order of the Holy Edict?" "No," Leo shook his head. The healing he was using was magic, not a divine art. "Not high-ranking, but you possess such skill. You must be very talented," he praised. "You think I'm using divine arts?" Leo looked at him puzzled. "Why are you so certain? Isn't it obvious? You can tell if it's a divine art with just one look, can't you?" Riel looked back at Leo, just as confused. Leo stared at the faint glow emanating from his palm, and a strange thought began to form. The Elchigar School of Healing. The magic he was using. Was it identical to a divine art? His expression grew more peculiar. If he hadn't happened to use this skill today, and hadn't happened to run into Bishop Riel, he never would have noticed this bizarre fact. But just as he was about to question Riel further about divine arts, everything changed. A fleet of silver-white carriages sped toward them, kicking up a cloud of dust. Then, the Knights of the Holy Edict arrived, clad in uniform light armor, armed with cross-hilted longswords and large-caliber shotguns. The knights quickly cordoned off the area. One fully armed squad marched directly toward Leo. He thought they were coming for him, but instead, they slammed the bishop next to him to the ground and arrested him on the spot. "The Order of the Holy Edict? What are you doing? I'm healing the wounded. Have you got the wrong person? On what grounds are you arresting me?" Bishop Riel demanded angrily. A familiar voice answered him. "You were the one just using the Sea of Sistin's new divine arts, weren't you? Then there's no mistake." Leo looked up. The speaker was none other than the third prince. He narrowed his eyes, staring at the stunned Bishop Riel. "The Order of the Holy Edict expressly forbids the use of this divine art. You are charged with heresy, and I have sufficient reason to suspect you are a spy for the Sea of Siston. Take him away." Bishop Riel struggled, but it was useless. He was quickly dragged away by the heavily armed knights. The third prince's gaze then shifted to Leo. He froze for a second, and his entire face darkened. "You again? How is it I see you everywhere?" "Shouldn't I be asking you that?" Leo glanced at his insignia and smirked. "I heard you were confined for a full 2 months and got demoted." The third prince's unit had been infiltrated by followers of Nyarlathotep, leading to the great chaos in the fog. The king had been deeply disappointed in him. Ophelia had told Leo about his demotion. He had been knocked all the way down to a common inquisitor in the religious tribunal. The mere mention of it set the third prince on edge. He glared at Leo. "You're a student of the occult. How do you know holy light magic? I think you're suspicious too." He immediately turned to his knights. "Men, arrest him as well." "I'd like to see you try," Ophelia said, stepping forward with a cold smile. Seeing the fifth princess, the knights exchanged glances, none of them daring to move. "What are you doing here?" The third prince's expression grew even colder. As the two royals faced off, an old man slowly descended from a carriage, smiling as he came to mediate. "Your Highnesses, if you could each take a step back. The situation is urgent. The Emperor's safety must be our priority." The third prince looked at the old man, and though his face was still full of resentment, he gave a polite nod and turned to leave. Leo studied the old man. Ophelia leaned in and whispered in his ear, "That's the current pontiff of the Order of the Holy Edict, Pope Adrian. Leo nodded. So this was one of the three masters tasked with protecting King Charles II. When Ophelia mentioned the old man's name, Leo gave him a closer look. The newly appointed pope was about the same age as Headmaster Danton, with a kind face and an amiable smile. After the third prince left, Ophelia, thinking about what had just happened, asked curiously, "Your Holiness, are you arresting clerics who use the new-style divine arts?" Adrian nodded. "Indeed, we are. Heresy is no small charge." Ophelia frowned slightly. She had seen Leo and Bishop Riel working together to save the wounded. Riel could have just walked away, but whether out of compassion or adherence to his doctrine, he had chosen to help. And the moment he revealed his skill, he had been unluckily carted off by the knights. "Your Highness, this matter is not as simple as it seems," Adrian said, shaking his head. "The Order of the Holy Edict and the See of Sistan are rivals. To tolerate the widespread dissemination of new-style divine arts within our order is tantamount to infiltration. The consequences would be severe." Leo was well aware of the conflict between the two churches. Years ago, Wigner had orchestrated the schism to free itself from the See's meddling. Naturally, the See of Sistan harbored a deep-seated hatred for the nascent order of the Holy Edict. For a century, the two had engaged in verbal warfare, denouncing each other as heretics and degenerates. "Is the new magic that rampant?" Ophelia asked. "I mean, even a cleric of Bishop Riel's rank was using it. Wouldn't that mean it's even more common among the lower-level clergy?" "The exact numbers are unclear, but the situation is not optimistic," Adrian said, his expression grave. "That is why I have recently summoned the bishops of all dioceses. The spread of this new magic must be completely eradicated." Leo listened quietly as they spoke, learning more from Pope Adrian. The power of divine arts came from the God of Light, but after the gods' retreat during the ancient divine wars, the Church had suffered a devastating blow. The magic was no longer as potent, and the clergy grew weaker and weaker. Against this backdrop, the Saintesses' reforms in the See of Sistan had caused a major stir. A new system of magic and casting methods had begun to spread secretly within the Order of the Holy Edict, even becoming fashionable among grassroots priests recently. Many of them couldn't resist the temptation of regaining such power. The leadership's reaction had been slow. If Leo hadn't caused such a scene in the Northern Territories, leading to the discovery of Bishop Lawrence as a Sistan spy, the new magic might have truly become epidemic. From Pope Adrian's solemn tone, it was clear he was an absolute conservative and loyal to the king. That was why he had issued the strictest of prohibitions. Anyone found using the new magic would be branded a heretic. The punishment ranged from exile to execution. After their discussion, Adrian exchanged a few more pleasantries with Ophelia and then departed in his carriage. Tilly suddenly walked over, her eyes fixed on the departing pope with a sinister glint. "Ophelia, I seem to recall you suspected this old geezer might be one of Elia's moles. What do you say? Should I prioritize taking him out?" Ophelia shook her head. "From the looks of it, he doesn't seem to be one of Elia's. He is truly loyal to my father." "Really?" Tilly blinked. She didn't doubt Ophelia, whose ability to detect lies had never failed. But she found it amusing. "Why are so many people so loyal to your father? The Duke of Thornwood is the same, fighting to the death for him. Are you sure your father isn't an incubus? Why do you have to make it sound so suggestive?" Leo glanced at her, feeling like she was describing them as the king's boy toys. As for why Adrian was loyal, Leo figured it was simple. He had been personally elevated by Charlton II. Without the king's backing, his previous credentials would never have landed him control of the entire Order of the Holy Edict. Tilly had just finished helping Captain Raymond interrogate the 3 near-dead resistance members, so their work here was done. Leo was about to head back to New Haven with the others when Raymond hurried over. He didn't dare speak to Tilly, but he expressed his gratitude to Leo once again. Raymond's face was beaming with joy. "We got the dirt on this group now. This time, I'm going to smoke out the mastermind. Haha, another great achievement. Let those guys look down on me, always saying I'm just a coward who runs away. This time, I'll prove them all wrong." Leo silently glanced at the expressionless Elia, thinking, "Captain, you'll probably never solve this case." "Huh, who's this?" Raymond followed his gaze to Elia, thinking, "Haven't seen this kid in a few days, and he's already got another new woman." "Her," Leo said truthfully. "She's a mastermind." Raymond burst out laughing. "Leo, you're hilarious. Anyway, I gotta get back to it. I'll talk to you later." After Raymond left, the group exchanged glances. Tilly muttered, "He probably has no idea the the criminal mastermind behind all those resistance groups, is standing less than 6 feet away from him. Ophelia shook her head. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes ignorance is bliss. Over the next few days, a serious, preparatory atmosphere filled the old house. Everyone was exceptionally busy. Leo assisted the captain and BSI agents in swiftly purging all known underground resistance groups in New Haven, confiscating a thick stack of dark codices. Tilly was in the backyard, tinkering with her steam Gundam. They would occasionally hear explosions and feel slight tremors in the ground. Ophelia returned with the news that her father was determined to attend the exposition. Since he couldn't be dissuaded, she had given up. What puzzled Leo, however, was that the king genuinely didn't seem to care about the assassins. He couldn't figure out the source of his confidence. Even Helena was working hard in her own way, not on breast enhancement, but by pushing her corruption level to the max every few days. She knew that only in her monstrous form could she truly help her brother. As a result, they would often see a large mass of black tentacles wandering around the house. On the final night, they all gathered around the table, their expressions grim. Even though every visible threat had been eliminated, they all knew that things rarely went according to plan. This is my latest improved magic communication device. Tilly placed several rings on the table. One for each of you. Make sure you wear it. We need to stay in constant contact tomorrow. You finally got this thing working? Ophelia said irritably, though she eagerly picked up her ring. With this, she could finally contact Leo whenever she wanted again. Leo slid the ring onto his finger, then looked at his hand with a sigh. It was getting a bit crowded. What about her? Tilly glanced toward Elia, who was watching them with her hollow eyes. Ophelia glanced at her too. Tilly had cast a silencing spell, so Elia couldn't overhear their plans. But from the look of her, those vacant eyes would occasionally show a subtle flicker of emotion. She was probably reminiscing about the past. It's unclear if she'll be at the scene, Leo mused. Tilly, you and Helena stay here at the house and guard her. If things go south, you can teleport in for support. Got it, Tilly nodded. After the plan was set, Tilly dispelled the silencing spell. Leo walked over to Elia, thinking about how you're going to achieve your sinister goals tomorrow. Seeing everyone else had dispersed, leaving only Leo in the living room, Elia's gaze softened. She sighed softly. No, just remembering the past. Is that so? Leo studied her. When they were alone, she would occasionally revert to her old self. Then I'll give you one last chance, Leo said seriously. Stop this, and we can still go back to how things were. That's impossible. Elia avoided his gaze. What I hope for is that you stop standing in my way, Leo. Don't be my enemy. In her eyes, no enemy was more difficult to deal with than Leo. After all, he was once her light. You're obviously nostalgic for the old days, Leo pressed, and you envy seeing everyone gathered together. So why do you insist on continuing? You must know that what you're doing will destroy all of this. Is it the divinity controlling you, consuming you? He asked. If so, you just have to stop absorbing the power of faith. I want to see the real Elia. Elia remained silent. Leo was confused. Is the process of becoming a god irreversible? You have to see this through to the bitter end. Elia immediately shook her head. No, it's not like that. This is my choice. As for why, you'll understand in the future. Leo looked at her suspiciously. He had a feeling that the reason for her unwavering determination was not as simple as it seemed. But he knew he wouldn't get it out of her now. I hate Riddlers, he said annoyed. Elia smiled gently. To be honest, I hate this version of myself, too. Time quietly slipped by to the day of the king's visit to the Industrial Exposition at the Crystal Palace. Leo arrived at his booth early that morning. He ignored the factory owners who came by with inquiries. His role as an exhibitor was just a cover. He wasn't here to sell anything. According to Ophelia, King Charlton II's motorcade had already departed from Hager's palace. Leo scanned the surroundings. The entire Crystal Palace was buzzing with excitement for the king's arrival. About an hour later, Charlton II finally appeared. His procession was grand, surrounded by numerous powerful supernaturals and high-ranking church officials. A closer look revealed BSI agents lurking in the shadows. Wigner's two main official supernatural organizations had turned out in full force. Ophelia arrived and walked straight to Leo. Without a word, they both turned their gazes to the high platform. After making his entrance, Charlton II offered some words of encouragement to the major corporations and then began his speech. Leo could guess the content. War was imminent. Magitech industry was paramount. A call for arms manufacturers to dedicate their talents to the empire. Promises of financial support. And finally, a bold declaration. Either the enemy will walk over our corpses, or we will walk over theirs." The speech ended with thunderous applause. People shouted toward the stage, "Long live the Empire! Long live the King!" And finally, I wish this month-long industrial exposition a resounding success. Charlton II's face was flushed with vigor, not at all like the dying old man of the rumors. Amidst the electric atmosphere, a system notification popped up for Leo. "Where holy light falls objective. Stop the sea of Siston's conspiracy. Failure will result in a forced reload. Condition: maintain Wigner's chaos level below 45%. Exceeding this limit will result in a forced reload. Save point: Crystal Palace Exhibition Hall reloads remaining. May 5th friendly reminder. This mission will affect the world's future. Please proceed with the utmost seriousness. Good luck, investigator." Seeing the mission finally appear, Leo thought to himself that the system had never given such a grave warning before. Affecting the world's future? And this chaos limit. It felt like a leash. "Father is leaving," Ophelia whispered. Leo nodded. Seeing Charlton II depart the Crystal Palace, he immediately boarded Ophelia's carriage. Things deviated slightly from his expectations. The Crystal Palace, which seemed like a prime location for an attack, offered few good opportunities for an assassin. It seemed the only chance would be on the return journey. Opening the carriage window, Leo watched the bustling street. The assassination he was expecting never came. The motorcade proceeded smoothly. For a moment, it was eerily calm. Ophelia frowned. "Strange. Were we wrong? Be patient." Leo's gaze shifted from his surroundings to the front of the procession, focusing on Charlton II's position. Honestly, he was a little speechless. To show his support for the magitech industry, the king was riding in a convertible today. The convertible crawled through the crowded streets as the motorcade weaved through the city. The whole scene was a bit much. All it needed now was a lone gunman to complete the picture. Leo waited quietly. Finally, as the motorcade rounded a corner, as expected, the unexpected happened. The magic communication ring lit up. Helena's anxious voice came from the old house. "Leo, Ilia's consciousness has vanished." A teleportation ring flashed, and Tilly appeared instantly on the street. At the same time, at the front of the motorcade, not far from Pope Adrian, a high-ranking cleric let out a strange cry and lunged toward Charlton II. In midair, blinding spears of light materialized. It was her one-trick pony, Judgment. "Your Majesty, look out!" Pope Adrian was the first to react, being closest to the assassin. Divine art met divine art in a blinding flash of white light that nearly seared the eyes. Screams of panic erupted from the crowd. "Knew it was one of your church's moles," Tilly sneered, about to charge forward. But before she could move, she felt a thick, terrifying surge of magical energy. An incredibly strong magic shield enveloped Charlton II's car. The collision of divine and arcane power made the vehicle rock violently. The caster was one of the three masters, Hawkins, the Empire's chief royal mage. Inside their carriage, Ophelia immediately jumped out, with Leo right behind her. The front of the motorcade was in chaos. Hidden agents appeared from all sides, and palace guards formed an impenetrable wall around the convertible. It took Ophelia and Leo a great deal of effort to push through. When they did, Leo saw a large pool of blood on the ground. It wasn't Charlton II who was dead, but the assassin. The aging king was sitting perfectly fine in his car, his expression merely grim. He glanced at the various onlookers and waved his hand dismissively. "It is nothing. Return to the palace." He looked away. The motorcade continued forward, the wheels slowly turning. The guards' faces were resolute and thrilled, as if under the king's will, any enemy would be crushed like an ant. Tilly stared at the chief royal mage, her brow slightly furrowed. His power was unexpectedly great. Leo and Ophelia were also surprised that the assassination had been so easily suppressed. Tilly looked away from the mage and came over, puzzled. "Ilia failed? Maybe there are more assassins," Ophelia said uncertainly. "We can't let our guard down." Leo looked at the disheveled group from the church. Pope Adrian had been focused on protecting the king, so his people had borne the brunt of judgment. Adrian and several other high-ranking officials were bleeding, and healers were frantically trying to treat them. After watching the Pope's entourage retreat for medical attention, the three of them boarded Ophelia's carriage again. On the street, as King Charlton II waved to the crowd, thunderous cheers erupted. "God save the king! God save the king! Long live the king!" Leo's expression grew more and more strange. The motorcade traveled smoothly from the Whitechapel district to the administrative district without further incident. No assassins, No riots from resistance groups. Only a tsunami of boiling cheers. Is that it? Tilly stared at the palace complex, now close at hand. Hager's palace was just ahead. Something's wrong. We must have missed something. Leo's brow furrowed deeper and deeper. The strange feeling persisted until, in an instant, it was cut short by a system notification. Mission failed, unable to continue. Initiating forced reload. And finally, I wish this month-long industrial exposition a resounding success. On the high platform, as Charlton II concluded his speech, the Crystal Palace erupted in thunderous applause and cheers. Leo's eyes flew open. Save point. Crystal Palace exhibition hall reloads remaining. 4 out of 5 shit. I used one up just like that. Leo stared at the platform in disbelief. It was the exact moment the king was about to depart, which meant the previous mission had failed. But the reload left him completely baffled. He had no idea how the Sea of Sistens plot had suddenly succeeded. Where did it go wrong? What did I miss? Leo muttered, his eyes fixed on Charlton II as he left the stage. Ophelia noticed Leo's strange behavior. What is it? What happened? Ilia's plan might not be as simple as assassinating your father, Leo said, his eyes locked on hers. If it had been the chaos level, the system would have given a specific number. It hadn't, so the reason for failure had to be the primary objective. What? Not assassinating my father. Ophelia was even more stunned. How can that be? She's been colluding with all those resistance groups. We were misled. Leo's expression grew darker. But Ophelia frowned. All the opposition forces have been stirring. Even the Winter Kingdoms to the north have taken the opportunity to invade. All the evidence points to them making a move today, during my father's appearance. Their actions are related to today, but that doesn't mean their target is your father. Leo's eyes narrowed as he watched the 3 masters accompanying the king, especially the chief royal mage, Hawkins, who had so easily blocked the assassin's attack. The power Hawkins had displayed had even made someone as strong as Tilly look grave. Leo glanced at the other royal mages with Hawkins, then at Adrian and the clergy. And besides those in the open, Director Frederick's BSI agents were lurking in the shadows. All the heavy hitters were here. They had gone to great lengths to ensure the king's safety, giving off an air of being truly indestructible. This was likely why the king was so calm, even knowing an attempt would be made on his life. Leo suddenly felt that even if all the resistance groups swarmed the streets in a wave of suicide attacks, the result would be the same. The assassination had little chance of success, unless Ilia made a move herself. But the strangest thing was she hadn't been there. Leo clearly remembered Helena's warning that Ilia's consciousness had vanished. So where did she go? After the king left the Crystal Palace, the motorcade proceeded slowly on its way back to Hager's palace, the security as tight as before. Inside Ophelia's carriage, Leo stared at the cheering crowds, his mind racing through one possibility after another. Working backward from the result, it was clear that for Ilia, something was more important than assassinating the king. Ophelia watched him think, not daring to interrupt. They all knew Leo possessed a mysterious ability that bordered on precognition. All they could do now was trust him. First, Ilia's goal is to become a god. That's a given, Leo said, looking at Ophelia as if talking to her and to himself at the same time. He decided to re-examine the logic from the very beginning. And to become a god, she needs to absorb a vast amount of faith. She needs the entire world to believe in her. So, the Sea of Sistun, or the Church of Holy Light, must dominate the Wigner Empire, because this is the one dark corner her light cannot reach. In our original theory, Ilia wanted to kill Charlton, throw the empire into chaos, and then invade. The Winter Kingdoms and the resistance groups probably thought the same. But they were all just pawns she used to muddy the waters. Just then, the massive motorcade reached the same corner as last time. What was about to happen was the same assassination that had been so easily quashed. Leo's gaze was locked on the front of the procession. He didn't try to stop it, but instead watched events unfold. After Helena's warning that Ilia's consciousness had vanished, a brilliant light erupted. The blinding white flash sent the crowd into a panic. Chief Royal Mage Hawkins took control. The assassination was quickly stopped, and the assassin died on the spot after casting judgment. And just like last time, the unfortunate clergy were caught in the crossfire. The bleeding Pope Adrian was carried from the scene. Thinking of Pope Adrian brought to mind the incident in Kent a few days ago, and the unlucky Bishop Riel. This was the only faction to be removed from the board during the entire affair. And thinking of the Order of the Holy Edict, Leo's logic suddenly clicked into place. Based on what happened in Kent, Leo said grimly. Elia actually has another way to rule Wigner. She doesn't need to go to the trouble of conquering the Empire, doesn't need a war, to claim all of its faith for herself. The new style divine arts, Ophelia said, the words tumbling out. Fuck. Leo slapped his thigh in frustration. We were making a simple problem complicated. Elia doesn't need to invade Wigner at all. We were tricked. Everyone was tricked. The resistance groups were tricked, the anti-Wigner coalition was tricked, and we were tricked. That damn woman played everyone for a fool. It's true. Even now, I never thought a multi-nation army could actually march on New Haven, Ophelia said with a self-deprecating sneer. There was a much simpler way, yet she went to all this trouble, giving us so many puzzles to solve. She shot a pointed look at Leo. She really understands us. Especially you. All of Elia's convoluted plans were tailor-made for Leo and his group. She knew that with him around, her schemes would be hard to pull off, so she risked appearing herself to draw his attention, thereby concealing her true objective. Her understanding of Leo was terrifying. She had used a puzzle to completely absorb his focus. Tilly, Leo called through the ring. Follow Adrian's group. Don't be seen. We'll meet up with you shortly. What's going on? Tilly's voice came from the crowd, full of confusion. There's still a long way back to the palace. Are we just ignoring the king? Forget him. Elia's target is the Pope. Leo grabbed Ophelia, and they both leaped from the carriage. All right. Tilly immediately ended the communication, and her figure vanished in an instant. Leo and Ophelia pushed through the crowd, sprinting toward the New Haven Grand Cathedral. The Whitechapel district was so named because it housed the headquarters of the Order of the Holy Edict, a magnificent white cathedral. Once they left the king's procession route, the streets were less crowded. The church officials' carriages had been stopped on the road back to the cathedral. Leo saw bodies strewn across the ground, and Tilly, her expression grim, casting a spell. And Elia, at high noon, sunlight pierced the clouds, illuminating her pink hair. Her pale golden eyes, like the sun itself, watched Leo quietly. White wings unfurled from her back, and her fair skin glowed with a pure, holy light. She was ethereal, as beautiful as an angel. But at her feet was a large pool of crimson blood, and the ground was littered with corpses. Elia gently lifted Adrian's head, confirmed he was truly dead, and then turned to Leo with a sweet smile. So holy, yet committing such a brutal act. Both an angel and a devil. For the first time in 4 years, Leo saw Elia's true form. She hadn't descended upon a vessel. She had come herself. All right, you bitch. Tilly's face was flushed with anger. You actually dared to show your face. A torrent of magical energy collided with the holy white light, and a terrifying roar echoed through the air. Finally decided to stop hiding, Ophelia sneered, then immediately looked to Leo. This is our chance. Let Tilly hold her off while I get reinforcements. All the Empire's best are here. She can't escape. It's too late. Leo shook his head. Mission failed, unable to continue. Initiating forced reload. Though he was about to reload again, he still had plenty of attempts left. Leo wasn't too disappointed. After all, he now understood exactly what she was trying to do. After blocking Tilly's magical onslaught, Elia ascended into the sky, looking down at Leo. Even now, you're still going to stop me, Leo? You still won't give up. You've already lost. Leo looked up at her. I may have lost this round, but I am curious. Is killing just Adrian enough? Of course not. A faint smile touched Elia's lips. Adrian was the king's most loyal dog. These confidants of his were all conservatives and hardliners, Leo nodded. They were also the ones who most vehemently opposed the new magic and led the Inquisition against it. Once they were dead, no matter who the king promoted to replace them, it would be too late. There were surely many more clerics like Bishop Riel who couldn't resist the temptation. If they were promoted, they certainly wouldn't investigate themselves. In the future, no one would know who had used the new magic. Let me guess, Leo said with certainty. Every cleric who uses the new magic will fall under your control, right? After all, your name is added to their prayers. If so, the future order of the Holy Edict would be full of moles. Are you trying to get information out of me, Leo? Elia smiled faintly. You've already lost. Don't struggle pointlessly. Who says? Leo sneered. I've already told you. I will make sure your light never dawns upon this world, and I will make your life's work, everything you've strived for, crumble to dust. Elia saw the defiance in his eyes and smiled with utter confidence. Then I'll be waiting. Chapter 3, 10-inch, and finally, I wish this month-long industrial exposition a resounding success. Back at the exposition, the hall filled with thunderous applause. It was the same, familiar scene all over again. Leo had heard the king's speech 3 times now. He could probably recite it from memory. Save point. Crystal Palace exhibition hall reloads remaining. March 5th, the moment he returned, Leo contacted Tilly through the ring. What? You want me to protect that old geezer the Pope? And the other church higher-ups? Tilly's voice was incredulous. She'd never heard such a request in her life. Her feud with the church was legendary. As the long-hunted Witch of Calamity, she'd never imagined a day would come when she would have to protect them. It's the only way, Leo said, resigned. If she gets control of the Order of the Holy Edict and combines it with her own Church of Holy Light, she'll absorb all the faith in the world. He's right. Ophelia immediately agreed. She didn't much care if Elia became a god or not. The woman hadn't expressed any desire to steal Leo or have him all to herself. Besides, the old Elia was the type who wanted the family to be together. She wasn't a threat. What worried Ophelia was that if Elia, the saintess of the Sea of Sistun, became a god, the age of the church would inevitably return. As a member of the royal family in one of the most secular nations on the continent, Ophelia knew exactly what that meant. It was a past not so distant, an era where every aspect of life, from birth to death, was governed by divine guidance. In that age, doctrine was law, and serving the gods was the entirety of life. It was orderly, yes, but also stagnant and archaic. Things like the magitech industry would never emerge in a world like that. I know that, of course, it's just. Tilly's reluctant voice came through the ring. Hearing her hesitation, Leo knew exactly how to handle her. He said with a grin, "When that happens, Elia will be way more powerful than you. You'll never be able to beat her again." A scornful laugh came from the other end. A mere saintess? How could she possibly be stronger than me? After that boast from the top-tier powerhouse, Tilly vanished from the old house and reappeared a second later in the crowded hall. The motorcade hadn't left yet. She scanned the guards, looking for a way to blend in. Hearing that Tilly was in position, Leo smiled to himself, then looked to his side. "Ophelia, we're going directly to Adrian. I need you to handle this." "All right." Ophelia didn't hesitate, immediately leading Leo toward the group from the church. With the plan changed, and everyone having a role, Helena's voice came through the ring. "Leo, what about me? What about me?" "Your mission is the most important," Leo said. "Ah, really?" Helena's voice was filled with excitement. Leo nodded. "You're in charge of holding down the fort." "Oh." A deflated sound came from the other end. She glanced resentfully at the motionless Elia. With Tilly gone, it was just the two of them in the living room. Helena sat bored on the sofa, waiting for her brother's next instructions. The room was silent for a long time, until a faint flicker in Elia's hollow eyes. She glanced at the spot where Tilly had just vanished, her expression thoughtful. While the motorcade was still waiting outside the Crystal Palace, Leo and Ophelia found Pope Adrian. "Her Highness's meaning is, the assassin is hidden among our church. We have a traitor in our midst." Adrian looked at them, confused. "That's right. The assassin is right here." Ophelia's cold gaze swept over the high-ranking clergy, her eyes quickly passing over one man in particular. Leo had already marked the assassin, a plain-looking, middle-aged priest who remained perfectly calm even as their gazes fell upon him. "Your Highness." Adrian lowered his voice seriously. "Do you have any proof? His Majesty is about to return to the palace. The schedule cannot be delayed. If anything goes wrong during this time, the target isn't my father. It's you," Ophelia said flatly. "As for the proof you need, you'll see it in a moment." "Me?" Adrian was stunned. He had never considered that possibility. Because of Ophelia's interruption, the motorcade was delayed. A group of the king's attendants hurried over. "Your Highness, His Majesty would like to know what is going on." All eyes turned to Ophelia, except for the assassins. Leo noticed his lips move slightly. This was the only chance. With a cry of "The Lord is with me," in an instant, countless spears of light materialized above the heads of the church leaders. It was so sudden that none of the clergy had time to react. But in the next second, the spears of light didn't fall. They didn't turn everyone into pincushions because Tilly, disguised as a security guard, made her move. She flashed behind the assassin and swung a nightstick, wrapped in magical energy, at the back of his head. The assassin, clubbed from behind, not only failed to finish his prayer, but also didn't even have time to commit suicide. His eyes rolled back in his head, and he collapsed to the ground, foaming at the mouth. Leo gave Tilly a silent thumbs up. He had been wondering how she would conceal her magic, but he hadn't expected such a simple, brute force physical solution. It seemed every mage really did have a dream of being a melee fighter. Adrian, his face pale, turned to Ophelia. She glanced at the unconscious assassin on the ground and smiled. Your Holiness, with the assassin caught in the act, is this proof enough? Enough, more than enough. Adrian stared at the man and quickly ordered his subordinates. Take him back to the cathedral for questioning immediately. Do not alarm His Majesty. In the Whitechapel district at the New Haven Grand Cathedral, Tilly used her marionette Hex to interrogate the dazed assassin. Through him, Leo learned that this priest, named Lance, had turned traitor for much the same reason as Bishop Lawrence. He had come into contact with the new-style divine arts, been selected by the sea, and secretly approached. But Lance was more devout. He had been brainwashed by Elia, willing to dedicate his life to the light and die for the Saints. He had become an important mole for the sea in the capital. Tell me everyone you know. Every agent the Sea of Sistun has hidden in New Haven, Tilly commanded. Okay. Lance's mouth moved stiffly, and he rattled off a string of names, which a church scribe hastily wrote down. Did Elia give you any other orders? Besides the assassination, does she have any other plots? Tilly asked. No more. I don't know. Lance answered stiffly. Tilly turned wearily back to Leo. Dark magic involving souls was always draining, and the interrogation had been going on all afternoon. Leo glanced at the sky. It was already dusk. Lance had told them everything he could. Good work, Leo said with a smile. Let's go home for now. We'll talk more there. Tilly finally let out a sigh of relief. In the interrogation room, seeing that they were leaving, Pope Adrian quickly said, Your Highness, your friend's skill with magic is truly exquisite. May I ask who she is? Ophelia, of course, had no intention of revealing Tilly's name. She had no time for the Pope, simply giving him a wave goodbye as she left. Walking down the steps of the Grand Cathedral, Leo looked out at the peaceful city of New Haven under the setting sun. The king was long back at the palace, his journey uneventful. The Pope was alive, the assassin was caught, and the Sea's spy network in New Haven would soon be uprooted. It seemed the conspiracy was truly over. But strangely, the mission was still not complete. In front of the church, Tilly noticed Leo's grim expression. What's wrong, she asked. We caught the assassin. Isn't it over? Leo shook his head. I don't know. His gaze was fixed on Captain Raymond's, who had just leaped from a carriage and was rushing toward them. Leo sighed. Maybe it's just getting started. Leo, it's bad. The familiar refrain. The moment Leo saw him, he knew trouble had found them. Now, even Ophelia and Tilly wore the same guarded expressions, like soldiers bracing for an attack. They'd all developed a Pavlovian response to the sight of the captain. What is it, Captain? Leo asked directly. Another big case? It is, Captain Raymond said, never one for pleasantries. Mass riots have broken out in several cities in Leicester County to the south. It's almost identical to what happened in Kent, all instigated by underground resistance groups. Resistance groups again? Tilly immediately looked at Leo. According to your theory, the groups Elia was working with were just a diversion, right? Pawns on the board. Multiple cities? Mass riots. Ophelia and Leo exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. They may just be pawns, Leo murmured to himself. But under these circumstances, Ophelia continued, if she wants to accelerate the adoption of her new holy magic, even pawns can be incredibly useful. Leo stroked his chin, thinking, since we stopped the assassination and prevented her from taking out the church's leadership, her only option is to make the regional churches fall. Ophelia mirrored his gesture, her own fingers tracing her chin. If she summons those monsters all over the country, the regional churches won't be able to handle it. We'll see a repeat of the disaster in Kent. And that's the perfect opportunity to promote her new holy magic. Its healing effects are undeniable, and in a crisis, people won't ask too many questions. Watching the two of them stroking their chins with identical expressions, Tilly felt a wave of exasperation. Seriously? It's like watching a duet. Can't you two just finish a thought in one go? When they both looked up at her in perfect sync, her frustration deepened. She had to admit, there were times their thought processes were unervingly similar. The Wigner Empire is huge, Tilly said, her tone sharp. Making all the regional churches collapse isn't that simple. Are you two giving her too much credit? Let's go see for ourselves, Leo said, looking at Tilly. Teleport us to any regional church. The farther from the capital, the better. A teleportation circle blazed to life, and Tilly transported them to a small coastal town in the south of the empire, not far from the port of Brugge. The moment they arrived, Leo heard the crackle of gunfire from the seaside. He looked toward the long breakwater and saw a teeming mass of grotesque, half-human, half-fish creatures swarming onto the land. The deep ones shrieked in a language unintelligible to human ears, their cries a jarring assault on the psyche. Corpses littered the shore, where numerous figures in white robes were administering aid. Leo's eyes immediately locked onto one of the priests. The sphere of light in his hands was too pure, too brilliant. This is probably happening in a lot of places at once, isn't it? Ophelia said, frowning. Let me contact the Order of Magical Arcanists. Give me a second. After casually swatting away a large cluster of monsters, Tilly used a communication spell to contact the Grand Library on the archipelago. Though small in number, the Order's members were active across the continent, and monitoring the churches was their top intelligence priority. After all, both the Eastern and Western churches were their primary enemies. The magical communication lasted for several minutes. When it ended, Tilly's face was grim. So far, at least a dozen regional churches are dealing with disasters like this, and the number is probably growing. Did Elia distribute every dark codex the church has confiscated over the last 1,000 years? Ophelia said with a sigh. Over the next hour, Tilly teleported them to several other towns. The scenes were largely the same. Bizarre monsters, panicked and weeping civilians, and the knights of the church battling alongside healing priests. In one inland city, Leo walked straight toward one of the priests. The man was in the middle of casting a spell when his eyes suddenly shot open in ecstatic joy. He began babbling incoherently, his strange behavior drawing the attention of his colleagues. Curious, Leo approached him. What's wrong? The danger isn't over. Why are you so excited? The priest shouted, his voice trembling with emotion. I just heard it. I heard the voice of God. I felt the sacred, supreme light. He has returned. The God of light has returned. What? His colleague stared in shock. Are you serious? The God of light has truly returned. He has. He's really back. The priest was so overcome, he was on the verge of tears. The darkness will finally recede. He will bring light and order back to this land. 1,000 years. We finally waited for this day. We are saved. A wave of fervent excitement rippled through the ranks of the church. Similar scenes were playing out in dioceses all across the Wigner Empire. Priests everywhere were feeling the descent of the light, hearing the divine oracle. It was a spectacle reminiscent of the golden age a millennium ago, when the true God of light still walked the earth. The regional churches were falling faster than Leo had imagined. Even with Tilly's teleportation, they were powerless to stop the rapid spread of the holy light. Elia had exploited a massive vulnerability. The most powerful figures in the regional churches, the bishops, had all been summoned to the capital for a meeting by Pope Adrian. Soon, the Wigner Empire would truly become a land where the holy light had descended. Chaos level 24, chaos level 26. As the chaos spread, system notifications popped up in Leo's vision. For him, this was a slow death. And this time, he hadn't even seen Elia in person. It reminded him of his last reload, of the confident smirk on her face. It had been a long time since he'd been pushed this far, forced to reload so many times. Leo let out a harsh breath, his hand dropping to his old friend, the revolver at his hip. You played all your cards, Elia. Now it's my turn. His expression hardened into a dark mask. He was done playing. It was time to flip the whole damn board. And finally, I wished the month-long industrial exposition a resounding success. Success, my ass, Leo thought, glaring at King Charlton II on the high platform. He was so sick of hearing that line. What is it? Ophelia asked, looking at him with concern, wondering how her father had offended him. Leo took a deep breath. Nothing. Small issue. Save point. Crystal Palace exhibition hall reloads remaining. February 5th. 2 lives left. He was being pushed to the brink. That goddamn pink-haired woman. Leo's gaze grew colder. The thought of her elaborate schemes, of her running him in circles, filled him with a bitter frustration. A self-important, arrogant woman like that deserved to be locked in the lightless basement of the old manor and taught a harsh lesson. Punish her until she learned her place. Having learned from his last reload, Leo forced himself to calm down and review the situation. Right now, the dilemma was this. If he stopped the assassination and saved the church's leadership, Elia would pivot to the regional churches, leading to a slow, inevitable defeat. But he couldn't just let Pope Adrian and his cohort die, or he'd fail the mission outright. So Leo's new strategy was to save no one. Let them all die. He was done playing Elia's game. Now that he understood the principle behind her power of faith and had seen her entire hand, he was going to smash the whole game to pieces. He wouldn't lift a finger for the capital or the regional churches. Miss Wizard. Leo's voice was cold as he called out through the ring. I need you to help me completely annihilate the sea of Siston. If you can level the holy mountain itself, even better. Can you do it? What happened? Why the sudden urge to wipe out the church? Tilly sounded confused, but she answered anyway. I mean, I can, but a forbidden tears spell above the ninth circle. It requires a very long incantation, and the church's top masters will definitely feel the massive magical fluctuation and try to stop me. Leo, you mean? Ophelia was stunned by his mental leap. Just moments ago, they were discussing how to protect the king from assassination, and now he was talking about this. Had she missed something? Leo explained Elia's plan to infiltrate the Order of the Holy Edict and then laid out his own idea. A strategic trade. A base race. Elia wants to control the churches in Wigner, to absorb faith from every corner of the continent. Right? I'll let her have it. And in return, I'm going to destroy the home base she's spent years building. The Sea of Siston. When that happens, what good is controlling the Wigner churches? She won't have a home to go back to. The faith she needs for ascension will be cut down to less than a quarter of what it was. Leo's laugh was humorless. Ophelia's eyes lit up. That's not a bad idea. And with Tilly on our side, it's actually highly feasible. She looked at his furious expression, a small smile playing on her lips. Even this angry, he was still thinking calmly, still finding some ridiculously clever angle to shatter the game. It was one of the things she'd always admired about him. A man worthy of being chosen by someone as exceptional as herself. Hearing Leo's plan, Tilly nodded enthusiastically. Just cause maximum damage, right? I get it. Exactly. Your mission is to kill, Leo said, his voice ruthless. Everyone who believes in Elia must die. From nuns to priests, from followers to bishops. Don't have any psychological burden. Kill, 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 kill. A strange smile touched Tilly's lips. Psychological burden? Why would I have one? The church has been the sworn enemy of the Order of Magical Arcanists since its birth. It's time to settle old and new scores alike. I'll head back to the Council of Elders first. I'm sure plenty of powerful mages will be eager to join in. The two of us will keep Elia busy here, Leo said. Without her, the church won't be able to stop a top-tier powerhouse like you. Tilly laughed with excitement, then ended the communication. Leo and Ophelia rejoined the procession, quietly waiting for the assassination to begin. A long while after Tilly had gone, in the silence of the rocking carriage, Ophelia suddenly looked at Leo, who was lost in thought. You know, compared to Tilly, who's already killed countless people, you're the one who's going to carry the heavier burden, aren't you? Me? Leo paused, then a cold smile spread across his face. How could I? I'm not a good person. I'm a minion of an evil god. I won't lose a wink of sleep over how many people die because of me, especially when they're the enemy. Oh, I suppose so. Ophelia averted her gaze, her pale eyes drifting absently to the window. A lie. The carriage moved forward, still far from the corner where the ambush would occur. The atmosphere grew heavy. Just then, amidst the chaos of his thoughts, Leo heard a crisp, tinkling laugh. It was like the giggle of a malicious little girl, right next to his ear. Leo's brow furrowed. He scanned the carriage. It was still just him and Ophelia. Nyarlathotep. That's me. Long time no see. Did you miss me? Leo took a deep breath, glanced at the crowds outside the window, and didn't answer. He couldn't be bothered to deal with her. But of course, Nyarlathotep wouldn't let her chosen vassal off so easily. She giggled, putting on such a calm and collected face. But inside you're all twisted up in knots, aren't you? Siston is a city of 2 million people, you know. And the Holy Mountain is home only to the devout. Are you really going to slaughter all the old, the young, the women, the children? Every day, the priests shelter innocent people from creatures of darkness, according to their sacred doctrine. Every night, kind-hearted nuns sing lullabies to help the children sleep peacefully. Nyarlathotep's voice was filled with mock sadness. How could you do this? How can you bear to kill them? The Leo of the past was such a kind person. Leo finally snapped. He sneered. I don't believe a creature like you feels any sympathy for humans. Stop acting. You just want me to feel guilty. You just want me to suffer, don't you? You guessed it. But what I said is also the truth, isn't it? Nyarlathotep's voice was laced with amusement. The old you, though humble, possessed a genuine goodness. But as you've gradually become a being who looks down on humanity, you don't even care about killing an entire city. It seems you've finally fallen, just as I predicted. Her tone grew more and more excited. This transformation is truly the most delightful thing. What could be more delicious than your corrupted and fallen self? Then you're destined for disappointment, Leo said, his eyes on the distance. Because I was always like this from the beginning. I've always been selfish to the extreme. So there's no fall to speak of. Nyarlathotep's laughter grew more exaggerated. Even the princess can see you're lying, but you're still trying to hide it. It's so funny. Leo glanced at Ophelia, whose expression was growing more concerned. He offered her a reassuring smile. To her, he must just look like he was talking to thin air. Aren't you busy? Leo scoffed. Did you just show up today to laugh at me? You're my vassal. What's wrong with showing a little concern? Nyarlathotep's voice turned seductive. How about this? If you don't want to dirty your own hands, if you want to go back to being your old self, why not use the power I gave you? The world is getting more chaotic, so you'll get stronger and stronger. She's just a demigod. You could defeat her easily. How about it? Tempting, isn't it? I'll solve the capital's problem myself. I won't use the authority you gave me, Leo said coldly. Go back. Stop wasting your breath. Whether it was the mission's chaos level limit or a deep-seated resistance within him, Leo was truly reluctant to use that power. It was like an addictive drug. Once you'd experienced it, it was incredibly hard to resist using it again. He also had a nagging premonition that using the authority of chaos too often would warp him into something more evil, more chaotic. He'd felt a taste of it at Thornwood Castle, when he'd found himself looking forward to more chaos, more drama. Is that so? Nyarlathotep seemed to sense his resolve. She laughed with wicked glee. In that case, I hope you don't regret your decision. Her laughter faded into the distance, finally disappearing completely. Ophelia, quick-witted as ever, had already guessed what Leo had just experienced. She gripped his wrist tightly, her voice trembling slightly. It's over, right? She's gone. Yeah. Leo squeezed her hand back, soothing her anxiety. Don't worry. It's okay. Ophelia finally let out a breath of relief. Before they knew it, the procession had reached the bustling downtown district. Leo poked his head out. The next street corner was where the assassin would appear. Let's go, Leo said softly. Time to face Elia. Right. As the convoy slowly rounded a corner in the downtown district, the ambush Leo had been waiting for played out once more. Light erupted. The priest Lance's judgment lit up the sky as a volley of blinding spears of light rained down from above. Brother, Elia's consciousness has vanished. Helena's urgent warning came through the ring. Your Majesty, be careful. Pope Adrian threw himself forward. The crowd screamed and scattered. Leo and Ophelia watched the chaos unfold in silence. The assassination attempt went just as it had the last two times. The chief royal mage, Hawkins, locked down the area with powerful crowd control. The priest Lance committed suicide, and a blood-soaked Pope Adrian was carried away from the scene by his men. The injured pope would be taken back to the New Haven Grand Cathedral for treatment. Along the way, Elia would make her move personally. This was Leo's only chance to catch her. We're following them, Leo said, hopping down from the carriage. Ophelia scanned the crowd for her shadow guards, then turned her gaze to Director Fredericks of the Bureau of Special Investigations. She couldn't be of much help to Leo in a fight of this caliber, but she had something else. Power. Your Highness, are you certain? Director Fredericks, dressed in plain clothes, followed behind her. He tipped the brim of his hat down, glancing back at the king in his open-top car. It's a long way back. If I leave, what happens if something befalls His Majesty? Relax, old Fredericks, Ophelia said, glancing back at him. With Hawkins there, who could touch him? Besides, the church's target was never my father to begin with. That Hawkins fellow is strong, but Fredericks hesitated. Although he was a firm supporter of the fifth princess, his official duty was to the king. If King Charlton II got so much as a scratch, he would be held responsible for dereliction of duty. Elia is the saintess of the church and the de facto ruler of our enemy, Norscal. If you capture her, you'll be the first to claim such a monumental achievement, Ophelia said with a sly smile. She watched his expression shift and pressed on. And who's to say Elia doesn't have other plots in mind, sneaking into the capital like this? Your Highness, you mean? I mean, Elia is a transcendent powerhouse, far stronger than any of us. Perhaps she is here to assassinate my father. In which case, coming with me isn't dereliction of duty. On the contrary, you're protecting the king. You're fulfilling your duty to the letter. After that, Ophelia said no more. Director Fredericks gave a weary, bitter smile. With the princess framing it like that, he had no room to argue. He and the BSI had been hitched to her wagon from the moment she took oversight of the bureau and proposed his promotion from obscurity. He could never be truly neutral. The second and third princes already saw him as a thorn in their side. Whichever of them took the throne, he and his agents would face a merciless purge. Fredericks rounded the last street corner, looking back at the procession, which was slowly returning to order. He saw the second and third princes riding back from the front of the line. In this vortex of power, everyone was heading toward their final destiny. "Father, are you all right?" The third prince beat his brother to the punch, voicing his concern. "That was so dangerous. Perhaps you should switch to a different vehicle," the third prince continued. He'd always thought his father's choice of an open-topped Magitech car was reckless. He had no idea what his older brother, in charge of security, was thinking. But after his outburst of worry, the air fell silent. King Charlton, too, merely gave him a passing glance. The third prince froze. A beat later, he realized his mistake and instantly regretted his words. His eyes flickered subconsciously to his brother. William's face was a mask, but the third prince knew he was laughing at him internally. Damn it. No wonder he didn't speak up first. After a long, awkward moment, Charlton finally spoke. "Remain calm at all times. Do not wear your emotions on your face. Third son, had you forgotten what I taught you? The Magitech industry is of paramount importance. Both your brother and your sister understand this. Knowing this now, I shouldn't have sent you to that antiquated church." "I'm sorry, father," the third prince said, lowering his head. "Learn from your brother on this matter. Now go back." Charlton's gaze shifted slowly to the second prince. "William, you stay. I have a few things to discuss with you." "Yes, father." The cheers of the crowd grew louder, a roaring tide of support. Amidst the adulation, King Charlton too waved to his people. William looked at his father. His face was, as always, an image of unshakable calm. "Long live the king! God save the king! God save the king!" After surviving the assassination attempt, the aging monarch's image had not diminished in the slightest. Instead, he seemed even more heroic, more formidable. To the people, the unyielding king seemed to be a symbol of divine providence itself. The procession continued, wheels turning slowly. The guard spirits were lifted by the crowd's fervor. Under the king's will, it seemed any enemy would be crushed like an ant. In the Whitechapel district, on the road to the Grand Cathedral, the Pope's carriage lay overturned. Adrian clutched his blood-soaked chest and crawled painfully from the wreckage. He looked up at the sky, where a woman wreathed in holy light stared down dispassionately at the scene below. "Ilia Christine," the Pope whispered. "The legendary saintess of a church? How does she dare?" The few surviving high-ranking church officials rushed to help the Pope up, their voices laced with disbelief. "When you're powerful enough, there's no such thing as dare." Adrian coughed up a mouthful of dark blood. If the princess's people hadn't shown up, he would already be meeting the god of light. "It really is her?" Director Fredericks' expression was equally stunned. He immediately began barking orders to his BSI agents. "Spread out. Take the high ground. Evacuate the civilians. Notify the city guard." Bathed in a sacred glow, Ilia looked down on the assembled force of superhumans, her gaze finally settling on Leo. "It seems you were lying in wait for me. That ability of yours again." "Of course, and I've already foreseen your failure," Leo said, his voice cold. "You've lost." A small smile played on Ilia's lips. "Next time you lie, try not to look so adorably pouty." "What? You can read expressions now." Ophelia shot back mockingly. "Surrender. This is New Haven. Every superhuman in the city will be involved in hunting you down. There's no escape. And so what?" Ilia's laugh was arrogant. "You think they can stop me?" As she spoke, her pink hair lifted as if in an unseen wind. Her white wings unfurled, and the light around her grew blindingly bright. It was a scene of breathtaking holiness, yet every superhuman present felt a chilling wave of death. The Saintess's judgment was on a completely different level from the assassins. "Stop her!" Fredericks roared. At his command, the air shattered with the deafening report of gunfire. The BSI's hunters, accustomed to taking down anomalies, had been aiming for some time. A storm of high-caliber alchemical bullets tore through the air, converging on the radiant sphere in the sky. In the same instant Ilia began casting her spell, Ophelia unleashed a large-scale terrain-warping ability. Low buildings shot upward, creating impromptu towers from which both flying and non-flying superhumans could launch themselves into the air. As one of the city's three most powerful individuals, Director Fredericks could no longer hide his true strength. A foul black aura swirled around him. Darkened muscles ripped through his clothes, and coarse black hair sprouted across his body. His face elongated, twisting into the long, grotesque features of a donkey. Even more startling was his weapon. To call it a sword was an understatement. It was massive and brutally crude, more like a slab of raw iron. Yet, in the grip of the now gargantuan Fredericks, the black greatsword seemed almost weightless. He stomped the ground, launching himself skyward like a cannonball, leaving two terrifyingly deep craters where his feet had been. Everyone was throwing everything they had at Elia, and Leo was no exception. He ran through the magical lessons the wizard girl had drilled into him just a few nights ago. With a brief incantation, the six-circle spell Cometfall shards materialized around him, then shot toward Elia like a barrage of blue energy. The combined force of so many powerful attacks converged on a single point, the very air screaming as it was torn apart. The display was immense, but the sphere of light representing Elia merely flickered. The combined might of so many powerful superhumans couldn't even make a dent. Leo watched the situation in the sky, forced to admit that Elia was currently far stronger than Tilly. She was terrifyingly close to godhood. Meanwhile, within the light, Elia was watching Leo. The smile on her lips grew more pronounced. Is that all? Leo, if this is your counterattack, I must say I'm disappointed. The sphere of light expanded until it seemed a second sun had appeared over New Haven. No one could stop Elia. In the end, judgment descended. Every high-ranking church official died on the spot. Pope Adrian's body was obliterated. The BSI suffered heavy casualties. A battered Director Fredericks fell from the sky. Princess, my sincerest apologies. Fredericks's massive body was riddled with gruesome, penetrating wounds. Crimson blood poured from him, quickly forming a pool at his feet. He leaned on his black greatsword, swaying unsteadily. We can't beat her. This saintess, even if it were me and Hawkins together, we wouldn't stand a chance. Leo rushed to his side, using Elchigar's School of Healing to treat his wounds. Mr. Sterling, don't worry about me. Get the princess out of here. Fredericks looked up at the sky and saw the saintess's gaze fixed on their position. She's coming down. Go. Princess, run. She's not here for me, Ophelia said, her voice laced with resignation. In her eyes, I'm not even a bug. Fredericks froze. He realized then that the saintess had been looking at Leo the entire time. Elia landed on the corpse-strewn street. Smiling, she walked toward Leo, one step at a time. Leo watched her approach, activating his sigil shield to envelop both himself and Ophelia. Seeing his defensive posture and the blood magic gathering in his palm, Elia couldn't help but chuckle. Leo, your magic is like a child's toy to me. What are you defending against? If I wanted to kill you, you'd already be dead. Elia glanced around, and upon confirming that the church's leadership was completely wiped out, her smile widened. The light will finally illuminate this last corner of darkness. You've lost, Leo. Oh, have I? Leo said flatly. I don't think so. Still putting up a brave front at a time like this. Elia studied his expression with amusement. The Pope is dead. The conservative faction is annihilated. Nothing can stop the spread of the holy light magic. What's more? She trailed off, smiling faintly as she opened her arms, letting the light bathe the streets. In that moment, Elia was like a proud monarch standing at a palace window, surveying her domain. She was the light, and all things would bow before it. If it weren't for the lack of a mission-failed prompt, Leo might have actually been intimidated. He smiled and finished her sentence for her. What's more, you have other means of infiltrating the regional churches, right? Soon, the entire Wigner church, from top to bottom, will be your followers. Your schemes really do have layers. You already knew? Elia's brow furrowed slightly. Seeing Leo's calm expression, she began to feel that something was wrong. If you knew all that, why did you ambush me here? She asked, her suspicion growing. To capture you, of course, and then drag you back to my basement. Leo's eyes glinted with mockery. Some people are so busy popping the champagne, they don't even notice their house is burning down. What? Elia's face changed. She immediately looked around. The light was fading. Not only that, she could feel her power weakening. It was because her source of faith was dwindling. She could no longer feel many of her most devout followers. Wait, why is this happening? Elia strained to listen. In the next instant, she heard it, the screams, the moans, and the desperate prayers of countless people. It was the Sea of Sistan. Something had happened to the holy mountain. Leo. Elia's eyes flew open, wide with fury. What did you do? What in God's name did you do? What did I do? Can't you feel it? Leo sneered. Or would you prefer a live broadcast? To see it more clearly? Before Elia could answer, Leo waved the ring on his finger. A magical projection of a living hell appeared before her. A terrifying torrent of soul energy was relentlessly bombarding the holy city of Sistan. The towering white walls were riddled with holes. The 100-meter-tall statue of the god of light had collapsed. The pristine white plaza, large enough to hold 100,000 worshippers, was now covered in mountains of corpses, with rivers of crimson blood flowing through it. Even then, the dark mages were not finished. They set their sights on the grand cathedral of holy light. All priests with combat abilities were using the sacred, fortified church as a final bastion against the enemy. The surviving citizens of the holy city were being evacuated there under the protection of the clergy. But that final line of defense, upon the arrival of a witch in black robes with violet eyes, was shattered. Tilly, Elia's eyes, now shot with blood, were glued to the figure in the magical image. Tilly had not only broken through the last defensive fortification, but she had also shattered the psychological defenses of the faithful. Despair flooded the grand cathedral of holy light. God, save us, please save me. Lady Saintess, save me, it hurts so much. It's so cold. Am I dying? Lady Saintess, are you truly watching over us? Why are you letting this happen? Have you abandoned us? Feeling the painful struggles and desperate prayers of her followers, Elia's eyes blazed with such fury they seemed ready to split. Her pale gold irises were turning red. Tilly, you witch! I'll kill you, you witch! She rounded on Leo, her voice a raw scream. You told her to do this? This is all you're doing? Of course, Leo said calmly. The plan to destroy the holy mountain was my idea. Tilly was merely the executor. It was the only way to make you lose the vast majority of your faith, the only way to truly weaken you. You're insane. Do you have any idea what you've done? You butcher. Elia's sanity was fraying. The desperate cries of her followers echoed ceaselessly in her mind, overlapping into an unbearable cacophony. She clutched her head, tormented. Takes one to know one, Leo said, watching her. If you hadn't pushed me so hard, this tragedy never would have happened. Ultimately, you killed them. You know, different from me. I killed them. I killed them. Elia gripped her hair, muttering to herself in disbelief. Impossible. Impossible. You're twisting my words. It wasn't me who harmed them. I am their saintess, their savior. I was going to bring them happiness and order. How could I be the one who killed them? Elia Christine, Prime, Affinity, 100 corruption level, 75 after finally seeing Elia's true self. Her status window popped up for the first time in 4 years. Leo watched her corruption level soar. Meanwhile, the desperate prayers of her followers did not cease. Stop it. Stop talking, I'm begging you. Elia's voice was almost a plea. I'm coming to save you. I will save you, I promise. Corruption level. 80. Elia struggled to suppress the violent storm of her emotions. Holy light swirled around her. She had to return to Sistan immediately. It was already late, but she had to go back. There had to be survivors. And she absolutely could not let Tilly continue to destroy the other cities of Norscal. But that damn Leo blocked her way again. What are you doing? Get out of my way. Elia dodged Leo's magical attack, her expression twisting into a snarl. No one can bear the consequences of angering me. Do you really want to die? Corruption level. 90. Leo certainly didn't want to die, but he had to risk death to stall for time. As long as he kept her here, her power would only grow weaker as her faith reserves dwindled. The surviving BSI agents, who had been observing from a distance, seemed to have figured out the situation. At a signal from Director Fredericks, they all charged forward, helping Leo buy more time. Fredericks himself was the most effective. Despite his injuries and the cumbersome black greatsword, his movements were astonishingly nimble, allowing him to evade nearly all of Elia's spells. He suddenly realized this was completely different from their first engagement. Not only was the white light dimmer, but her spells also lacked their previous terrifying lethality. A jolt of excitement shot through him. Just keep her tied up. Her power is fading. Protect yourselves. Yes, sir. The agents' faces lit up with renewed determination. With the change in tactics, the tide of the battle began to turn. They stopped trying to fight Elia head-on and instead launched a continuous campaign of harassment, delaying her teleportation. Leo watched Elia, now trapped and besieged, her condition deteriorating. But her hysterical, frenzied state also made her increasingly terrifying. Aar! With an enraged roar, Elia's body began to undergo an unsettling transformation. Leo noticed her bloodshot golden eyes suddenly become vacant and emotionless. All expression vanished from her face. She was no longer angry, no longer in pain. Her divine aspect had taken complete control. But then, an even more frightening change began. A faint light enveloped Elia's body. It bloated, swelled, becoming something unnameable. She slowly rose into the air. When Leo looked up again, just moments later, her human form had completely vanished. In its place was an eye. To be precise, a colossal eye, surrounded by countless smaller ones. The massive central eye was pure white, its dark pupil gazing down at the humans below with chilling indifference. The smaller eyes were arranged on wheel-like rings, which layered over one another and orbited the central eye like an armillary sphere. The sheer number of eyes, a dense, writhing mass, was enough to cause a visceral sense of revulsion. Illustration: everyone stared, stunned into silence. Although the thing was bizarre, its pure white form gave it a uniquely holy yet grotesque beauty. Elia Christine, aspect, the throne affinity, 0 corruption level. 0. Elia's current state left everyone both awestruck and terrified, causing them to back away instinctively. Even Leo and Ophelia were no exception. Leo stared at the massive eye, a strange feeling growing within him. Elia's species was anomaly, a rare, winged demi-human from the southern continent. They resembled angels, but they were still anomalies. How had she become a real angel? What had happened to her 4 years ago? Thinking back, this must be related to her cryptic behavior last time. Her desperate drive to achieve godhood had to be for a reason. As Leo mulled this over, the colossal eye in the sky remained motionless. It simply watched the earth below, posing no threat. Staring up at the colossal eye, the superhumans waited patiently, but the thing remained inert. It truly seemed to have no interest in the trivial affairs of the mortal world. Leo had always assumed corruption level was tied to danger. A thing with a corruption level of 0 was, it seemed, completely safe. This giant eyeball, it doesn't seem like it's going to hurt us, does it? Ophelia's voice was filled with confusion. It's been a while, and it's just spinning. It's like some kind of self-preservation mechanism, Leo guessed. By all rights, with her faith source decimated, Elia should have been demoted from a demigod back to a regular superhuman. Instead, this bizarre scene was unfolding. Let's wait a bit longer. If it still doesn't do anything. Ophelia voiced a thought that was like a deadpan joke. Why don't we just take it home? I'd love to take it home, Leo said with a sigh. In this state, Elia had 0 corruption, but she also had 0 affinity. It had no human emotions at all. We can't just keep waiting here, Ophelia said, looking off into the distance as the city guard finally arrived. It's alive, isn't it? Maybe if you raise it, it'll grow attached to you. Then you can contain it. Leo was actually tempted by the idea. But just as he was about to get closer to study the giant eyeball, with a thunderous rumble, the city guard forces arrived. He saw the second prince, William, on a tall steed, alongside the chief royal mage, Hawkins. My God, what is that thing? Hawkins stared at the sky, his voice filled with shock. The second prince was clearly frightened by the giant eye as well, but after a long, cautious observation, he, like the BSI agents, realized it posed no threat. It just spun quietly in the air. He finally relaxed. This must be something the church cooked up, right? Or maybe it's that Sanus's true form, he asked Hawkins. Master Hawkins, what's your assessment? Will this thing interfere with our next move? I've never seen anything like it, but as long as it's not a true god, his majesty can handle it, Hawkins said, seeming to have immense faith in King Charlton II. He then scanned the scene, observing the wounded Director Frederick for a moment before his gaze settled on the fifth princess, Ophelia. I must say, Prince William, this is your perfect opportunity. Of course. The second prince fixed his eyes on Ophelia and, with a cold smirk, issued an order to his men. Kill them all, including the fifth princess, Fredericks, and Leo. Make it quick. Yes, sir. William, what are you doing? Ophelia was suddenly surrounded by the city guard, the black muzzles of countless rifles, field cannons, grenade launchers, every advanced weapon the Magitech industry had produced, all aimed at her and the other superhumans. As he lost his mind, Director Fredericks looked at Ophelia, his expression bewildered. He couldn't comprehend what the second prince was doing. Why were their guns aimed at the BSI, who also served the king? And what made him think a few pathetic guns could kill powerful superhumans? William, do you know what you're doing? Ophelia's face was devoid of expression. We were here fighting the Saintus, sacrificing so many agents. And not only does the city guard arrive at snail's pace, but you dare to point your weapons at us? If father knew what you've done, he would be furious. After her speech, Ophelia expected William to show some hesitation. Instead, he just chuckled. Ophelia, my dear sister, do you really think I would dare to do this if father hadn't authorized it? What did you say? Ophelia was stunned. It was father. Father wants me dead. Of course, William said, smiling as he looked at Ophelia, at the competitor he considered his most formidable rival. This brilliant, quick-witted, and perceptive sister of his could finally die. Today, the game was over. How could it be? Ophelia was in disbelief. She could see that William wasn't lying. I did so much for him, solved so many problems no one else could. And yet, he wants to kill me? Why? I still have value. Ophelia had always thought she understood Charlton's cold-blooded nature, that he only ever saw her as a tool, that power was the only thing in his heart. But she had never imagined the old bastard would choose this moment to kill her. What was his motive? What about her made him so fearful? During the exhibition at the Crystal Palace, she had been convinced the assassins were targeting Charlton. She had exhausted herself trying to eliminate every possible security risk. Thinking back on it now, his actions were chilling. Honestly, it would have been better if the assassins had actually succeeded. Princess, don't waste your breath on him. Fredericks immediately stood in front of Ophelia. I'll get you out of this encirclement. We'll go to His Majesty. We'll have him give us justice. It's no use, old Fredericks. Ophelia's smile was bitter and filled with disappointment. This is Charlton's will. What? The realization dawned on Fredericks, and his shock intensified. How could the Emperor treat the Bureau of Special Investigations this way? His voice had never been so agitated. Without us, New Haven would have been destroyed countless times over. We have served the Empire with such distinction. What right does he have to do this to us? He tightened his grip on his black greatsword, his eyes locked on Prince William, just dozens of meters away. At this distance, with his power, he could kill him in an instant. All he needed was the word from the princess. Leo noticed Fredericks's simmering rage, but he suspected things weren't so simple. There was no reason for the second prince to be this arrogant, unless he had an ace up his sleeve. He'd overheard Hawkins's comment about King Charlton II earlier, and a theory began to form. If it was true, it might solve a mystery that had long puzzled him. Why, when the world was going to hell, did King Charlton II remain so calm? He did nothing, managed nothing, as if he couldn't care less. Perhaps there was only one explanation. King Charlton II had no fear of any superhuman below the level of a true god, whether through his own power or some other asset. If that was true, this was a far more serious situation than he'd thought. Leo silently took Ophelia's hand, standing with her. He never thought that their joke in the palace garden would become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If there ever comes a day when my father wants to kill me, will you risk your life to get me out of here? Ophelia seemed to have reached the same conclusion. She glanced at Leo, then squeezed his hand, her smile tinged with bitterness. Across the military formation, William watched their clasped hands and couldn't help but smile. Ah, to be young. Is the tender moment over? Since you said your last words, allow me to send you on your way. I still want to see him, Ophelia said suddenly. Let me see Charlton. I can't grant that request, William said, shaking his head. Father's very busy right now, because the war has already begun. War? Ophelia froze. That's right, war. The war father has been anticipating and planning for half his life, William said with a smile. Now that the holy city of Sistan has fallen, this is the perfect opportunity to completely crush our century-old enemy, Norscal. Leo's expression was almost as shocked as Ophelia's. But he wasn't stunned by the Emperor's ambition. He was stunned by the system prompt in front of his eyes. The chaos level was skyrocketing. Chaos level, 15 chaos level, 25 chaos level, 39. Fuck. 3 hours earlier, Hager's palace. After William escorted the Emperor back to his private chambers, King Charlton II dismissed all the attendants. Father. In the quiet room, William spoke hesitantly. He still didn't know what his father wanted to tell him, but judging by his rarely seen serious expression, it was something urgent and important. King Charlton II mulled it over for a long time before finally asking, William, you and Ophelia have always been rivals. Do you know to what extent she has mastered her ability? This? William was taken aback. Father, are you referring to the Dreamlands? He had initially thought his father was going to reprimand him for their rivalry, but he never expected this. Ophelia's bloodline talent was exceedingly rare in the Wigner family. In the entire history of the imperial line, only the founder, Emperor Antaeus, and one other great ruler in the middle had ever manifested such an ability. It was a power favored by the gods. It was said they could enter the bizarre domain of the god Nodens, and even create worlds of their own. Ever since William had learned of it, he had been incredibly envious of his sister. Now, that envy was mixed with a heavy dose of caution. Anyone who had ever crossed her knew just how troublesome that ability was. Not only was she brilliant, But her superhuman talent was also incredibly powerful. This was why William was so wary of Ophelia. Even with all the power he now wielded, he still didn't dare underestimate her. Some time ago, William recalled, an opposition group called the Night Ravens was apprehended. Ophelia was on the scene. Her ability was a great help to the police department. It said she blocked off every exit in the labyrinthine sewer system. Not a single criminal escaped. Is that so? King Charlton II fell into thought. Her control over the Dreamlands is becoming more refined, and she can now interfere with and influence reality almost perfectly. He sighed with emotion. I don't know what that child has been through. It's been less than a year, and her progress has been astonishingly fast. William was puzzled. His father seemed unusually concerned about Ophelia's ability. William, investigate Ophelia's activities, King Charlton II said suddenly, his tone grave. The Dreamlands pose a great danger, not just to our safety, but to the very future of the Empire. The future of the Empire? William was floored, but he nodded at once. Yes, father. After chatting with the king for a while longer, William was about to leave when an elderly attendant hurried into the chamber. Your Majesty, a report from the front. The holy city of Sistun has been destroyed. We've lost all contact with the Norscal leadership. What? King Charlton II's brow furrowed. Is the intelligence confirmed? It is confirmed. The attendant nodded immediately. The Minister of Intelligence delivered it personally. He came to report to your Majesty the moment he received the news. King Charlton II's usually stoic face was suddenly a mask of shock. Even he hadn't anticipated such a monumental shift in the status of their century-old enemy. His expression shifted from shock to elation, suppressing the immense joy welling within him. The Emperor's voice came out as a hoarse, leonine roar. Go! Immediately, summon the Minister of Defense, the marshals of the Army and Navy, and the General Staff. Yes, your Majesty. The Gilded Hall of the War God was located in the center of Hagra's palace. The fresco on its dome depicted the military victories of the Dragon King, Emperor Antæus. William listened to the murmurs of the generals and marshals around him as he gazed at one of the most famous scenes. Emperor Antæus seizing the crown from the Pope's hands and crowning himself, transforming the kingdom into an empire. Having grown up here, William had passed by these paintings of war and glory countless times. But he had never imagined that in his lifetime, he would witness an achievement on par with that of Emperor Antæus. It turned out everyone had underestimated his aging father. His ambition was not to merely maintain the status quo or be a passive custodian of the Wigner Empire. The moment he learned of the Holy City's fall, he had chosen war without a moment's hesitation. Recalling his father's eyes, like those of a reawakened lion, William realized he had been waiting for this moment for decades. His Majesty's plan is, the Minister of Defense said, a three-pronged rapid assault into Norscal's heartland, capturing key strategic areas along the way. A total of 12 legions will be mobilized. The Northern Front will seize the enemy's resource cities and their primary iron and Ethereum or production zones. The Southern Front will attack and burn the enemy's agricultural heartland, a densely populated region. The Central Army will secure transportation hubs along their route, before making a final push toward the holy city of Sistun, ultimately taking control of all major enemy cities. The Army Marshal mused, a rapid assault is the right idea. The new Magitech equipment we deployed this summer can certainly achieve that. But I believe splitting our forces is a grave mistake. It's better to concentrate our superior strength. But this is His Majesty's plan, and it's based on sound intelligence. The Minister of Intelligence also said, Oh, please, I know the king. He loved to micromanage in his youth. It's an old habit flaring up again. One general interjected, I think the focus should be on the Southern Front. The vast majority of Norscal's population lives on the Southern Plains. Give me 6 legions, and I can inflict nearly 50% population loss on the enemy, ensuring they won't recover for a century. No, the resource cities in the north are more important, another general argued. Our army relies too heavily on our industrial base. We need to live off the land. And what about the Navy? The Navy has no business here, the Army Marshal said with a smirk. Norscal is landlocked. I hope you're just as cocky when we're escorting your supply convoys, the Navy Marshal retorted. Seeing that the perpetually feuding Army and Navy were about to come to blows, the Minister of Defense quickly intervened. The Navy has an important role to play. You are all His Majesty's sharpest spears. As the marshals and generals engaged in their war of words, the tension in the hall of the war god grew thick. Nearly everyone was chomping at the bit, eager to unleash their armies upon the enemy, to water their horses at the foot of the holy mountain, and to achieve immortal glory for their king. William couldn't join their discussion. His mission was unique. Master Hawkins. William saw the chief, mage approaching, and gave a slight nod. His Majesty has sent me to assist you, Hawkins said, glancing at the noisy generals before turning to William. He will be in contact with me via magical communication. He is tired and needs to enter a quiet, closed-door meditation. Meditation? William frowned in confusion. His father wasn't a superhuman. Why would he need to meditate? I know you must be confused, but you will understand soon enough, Hawkins said, walking out of the Grand Hall and looking down upon the city of New Haven. This is His Majesty's ability, one he has never shown you before. He has studied it for so many years, and now he can finally use it for real. Whitechapel District, in front of the New Haven Grand Cathedral. William watched Ophelia's stunned expression, a victor smile on his face. He gave a slight wave of his hand. Fire! In an instant, a furious storm of firepower rained down upon the superhumans in the street. The roar of guns and cannons was deafening. Leo threw up his sigil shield, enveloping himself and Ophelia as a dense hail of bullets hammered against the magical barrier. He could block the bullets, but not the concussive force of the artillery. He felt the entire ground shake, and his six-circle advanced defensive spell began to buckle under the strain. If this barrage continued, he and Ophelia would be blown to pieces. He fumbled for the precious teleportation runestone he'd received as a mission reward. The moment things went south, he would grab Ophelia and bail. Returning to the old manor was always the safest bet. Dodging explosions, Leo scanned his surroundings. The relentless firepower had cut down many more of the superhumans. The few remaining elites were mounting a desperate charge under Director Fredericks' command. I'll kill you. Wielding his black greatsword, Fredericks became a blur, charging toward the heavily protected second prince. Even with his severe injuries, his momentum was terrifying. When he crashed into the enemy ranks, soldiers were mowed down like grass. The city guard fell into disarray. Quick, protect His Highness. The second prince's personal guards surged forward. It was useless. Fredericks had gone completely berserk. Over 2 meters tall, he swung his massive sword, its heavy blade cleaving through the guards' armor like paper, slicing them in two at the waist. Seeing Fredericks about to reach him, William's mask of calm finally cracked. He scrambled backward in terror. Master Hawkins, save me. Chief Royal Mage Hawkins finally made his move. He sneered at Director Fredericks as a wall of immense magical energy materialized in front of the prince. Oof, you black-furred monster. Today you die too. On the other side of the firefight, Leo was urgently contacting the wizard girl through his ring. I'm doing a high-altitude recon right now. I see. A massive army, their vehicles stretching out like a long black snake. They've already crossed into the vassal state, and they're moving fast. They'll probably take the border city on the other side any minute now. Wait, Elder Marjorie just notified me. There are sudden developments at several other border cities. Even the port of Brugge in the south is seeing activity. The sea is filled with ironclads. The Imperial Navy has blockaded the coastal cities of Florenza. They're using their cannons to intimidate the neighboring countries. I get the picture. Leo's expression was grim. No wonder the chaos level was rising even more insanely than last time. A sudden, all-out war had begun. Is this a chain reaction from us destroying the Holy Mountain? Tilly's voice was filled with astonishment. How did the Emperor find out so quickly? And he was so decisive. Mobilizing this many troops would take at least a month. He must have been planning to go to war for a long time. You're right, Leo said, looking at Elia, who was still floating motionless in the sky. We and her fought until we were both crippled, and Charlton swooped in to pick up the pieces. That old bastard has been plotting this for years. So what do we do now? Tilly asked urgently. Honestly, I don't know anymore. Leo gave a tired, bitter laugh. This round was just too damn hard. Between Elia with her layered conspiracies for ascension and the old Emperor with his decades-hidden ambition, the difficulty of this mission was off the charts. Chaos level 40. Due to the Wigner Army's large-scale military operations, the chaos level had now soared to 40. According to the mission parameters, if it hit 45, he would be forced to restart. Through the ring, Tilly seemed to sense his despair. There has to be a solution, she said quickly. Just like every time before, you will think of something brilliant. There's no time left, Leo sighed. Chaos level 41. Once the war started, everything spiraled into an abyss of chaos. It was over. Tilly had never heard him sound so defeated. Snap out of it, Leo. What do you mean there's no time? What's wrong with you? Nothing. Leo shook his head. You wait for me. Her voice was laced with worry. I'm coming back to you right now. We'll face this together. Okay. Though she probably didn't understand what he meant by not much time left, Leo agreed. Just stay right there. Wait for me. I'll be there. Suddenly, Tilly's voice through the ring began to break up. Tilly. Leo frowned. What's happening over there? Her voice grew fainter, as if the signal was being jammed. Why can't I get a lock on you? Leo, can you hear me? Leo was about to reply when the faint light on his ring flickered once and went out. The magical communication was completely severed. Tilly? Tilly. Leo was puzzled. The wizard girl had made this magic item herself. It wouldn't just break. Had the communication been intentionally blocked? He tried to contact Helena, who was waiting at the old manor, but there was still no response. It seemed the interference was on his end. That was terrifying. The distance from Whitechapel to his manor on Riverfront Road was nearly halfway across New Haven. Someone had the power to block magical communication over such a vast area, an area far larger than the Order's Island. New Haven wasn't just a city. It was a massive metropolitan area. Suddenly, a roar of defiance cut through his thoughts. Leo's gaze snapped toward Director Fredericks. The moment he saw him, he suddenly understood. Fredericks's body was undergoing a strange transformation. His 2-meter-plus frame was shrinking, the black hair withering, his elongated beast-like face reverting to its human form. It was as if he was being affected by one of Leo's suppression serums. In the end, Fredericks could barely lift his black greatsword. His speed plummeted. It seemed all his superhuman power was rapidly vanishing. In his berserk form, Fredericks could go toe-to-toe with Hawkins. Now, without his powerful physique, he couldn't even block a medium-caliber bullet. Under the city guards covering fire, Fredericks's body was riddled with holes. He clutched his chest, his eyes wide with disbelief. How is this possible? Meh. Bullets. The next second, a bullet whistled through the air and tore through his head. The sheer force of the impact threw him backward, and he collapsed into a pool of his own blood. One of the 3 most powerful superhumans in the government, killed so easily by a single gunshot. Leo stared at Fredericks's corpse, then at his own fading magical shield, and a look of dawning comprehension crossed his face. His magic was rapidly failing. Leo instinctively held out his hand, trying to summon the crimson edge of his blood magic, but nothing happened. He then gripped the teleportation runestone, but the familiar progress bar failed to appear. Finally, in desperation, he tried the simplest first circle spell, Magic Missile. Still nothing. It was as if magic no longer existed in this world. So that's it. All superhuman powers. Gone. This had to be the asset he had theorized about. King Charlton II's trump card. No wonder he never feared superhumans causing trouble in New Haven. This was his checkmate. He never thought the old bastard was capable of this. How was he supposed to play now? Leo felt a wave of despair, the feeling of being stuck in an unwinnable level of a game. And next time would be his last life. Across the street, William stared at Fredericks's body, muttering in amazement. So this is what Father meant when he told me not to fear any superhuman and to just do what needed to be done. Though Fredericks was the one who died, Hawkins's expression was strangely complex. He lowered his voice, his tone grim. That's right. This is His Majesty's null magic field. While he is in his meditation, you can sweep away all unstable elements. There are too many disgusting rats in this city. His Majesty needs a secure home front. William was overcome with excitement. His mission today was to eliminate all opposition forces. And who qualified as opposition, that was for him to decide. Almost immediately, his gaze swept past Fredericks's body and landed on Ophelia. He gave a cold command. The Bureau of Special Investigations is eliminated. All that remains is the chief conspirator, the 5th Princess Ophelia. City guard on my command. Leo. Ophelia instinctively tightened her grip on Leo's hand. My ability, I think it's gone. I can't change the terrain anymore. The two had been dodging the city guard's artillery fire. Leo had maintained the magic shield while Ophelia had, with perfect coordination, raised earthen walls and shields to cover them. But just as Leo's shield dissipated, her ability also vanished, and her expression grew tense. Without their powers, they were no different from ordinary people. Facing those black muzzles, they would be turned into sieves, just like Frederick's. Looks like we're going to die a pretty dramatic death here, Leo murmured, looking at the soldiers taking aim. Ophelia nodded gently. To die with the one she loved. It wasn't as frightening as she had imagined. Chaos level, 43. Chaos level 44. At this point, Leo was actually hoping for the chaos level to keep rising. Getting shot to death with Ophelia sounded pretty miserable. A four-system reload seemed preferable. He looked at her and asked suddenly, "Remember that time Charlton summoned us to the palace garden? What I promised you then?" Ophelia's pale eyes twinkled. She smiled. "I remember. I asked you, if there ever came a day when you wanted to kill me, would you risk your life to get me out of here? And you said." Leo said, "I'd storm the palace with you, and we'd take the damn throne together." But now, Ophelia's gaze swept over the soldiers. "We're about to die. You can't keep your promise." "Who says?" Leo looked at her seriously. "Next time, for sure." Ophelia giggled. "What next time?" "Of course there's a next time," Leo thought, looking at his system panel. Chaos level 45. "I made you a promise. I'll keep it." With that thought, no matter how defeated he had felt moments ago, Leo forced his spirits to rally. Mission failed, unable to continue game. Forcing reload. And finally, I wish the month-long industrial exposition a resounding success. Amidst the applause and cheers, Leo stared at King Charlton II on the high platform, his gaze turning to ice. Save point. Crystal Palace Exhibition Hall reloads remaining. 1/5 foot. What's wrong, Leo? Ophelia immediately noticed his expression. "Have you already spotted the assassin?" Leo reined in his palpable killing intent and looked at her. "Forget about the assassin for now." Leo lightly touched his ring, calling everyone via magical communication. "What is it, brother?" Helena asked quickly. "Did you find something unusual?" Tilly asked. "Let's talk when we get home," Leo said, scanning their surroundings. "This isn't the place." Ophelia was even more confused. She lowered her voice. "But weren't we supposed to follow the convoy and provide escort? Are we just going to leave, father?" Leo glanced at King Charlton II and sneered. "Don't worry about him. He's the safest person in the entire city." Ophelia wasn't up to speed yet. In the beginning, they had all been misled by Elia into thinking the assassins would target the king. But now, the person who wanted the king dead most was Leo. Back in the living room of the old manor, everyone looked at Leo, wondering what he was up to. "What now?" Tilly asked curiously. "What are we doing?" "First, we sleep," Leo said, shrugging off his coat and tossing it onto the sofa. Ophelia paused. Then her expression turned strange. "Everyone together. In my room," Leo said, turning to look at the stunned group. "Oh, right, Helena, you too." "What?" "Her too." Ophelia's eyes went wide. Helena looked at everyone, then at her brother, her cheeks flushing as she lowered her head. "What are you thinking?" Leo shot Ophelia an exasperated look. "I mean actual sleeping." Tilly snorted. "A dirty mind sees dirt everywhere." Ophelia rolled her eyes dramatically. Soon, everyone had trooped off to Leo's bedroom. The empty living room was left to a single, confused Elia. 3 minutes later, Leo's form materialized in another crystal palace. The environment was an exact replica of the exhibition hall, but devoid of the teeming crowds of visitors. It was eerily quiet and empty. "Brother, are we having a meeting in a dream?" Helena asked, intrigued. "Exactly," Leo said. They were, in fact, in a shared dream. Everything around them was a false scene he had constructed. Their real bodies were all lying in their beds, fast asleep. As for how he got them all to sleep so quickly, it was a bit of throwback to Season 2. He'd called over Ophelia's headmaid, Carolyn, who was an expert at hypnosis. "Why do we have to have the meeting in the Dreamlands?" Tilly asked. "For secrecy?" "No," Leo shook his head. "We're short on time." According to the normal sequence of events, the king would leave after his speech. It would take about half an hour for the convoy to reach the downtown ambush site, and about an hour to get back to the palace. In the dream state, because the brain processes information much faster, time was dilated by a factor of more than 10. Roughly speaking, 5 minutes in the real world was equivalent to an hour here. That gave Leo enough time to simulate and analyze the predicament he'd faced in his previous attempts. He only had one chance left. For the sake of his own life, he couldn't afford to be anything less than meticulous. He had to scrutinize every detail, and this last time, he wouldn't bear the burden alone. He would rely on the strength of his companions. Leo waved his hand, and the scene before them began to change. They were transported to a crowded downtown district, watching the Emperor's convoy pass slowly before them. This is what's about to happen. Soon, the hidden assassin, the priest Lance, unleashed a massive judgment. Spears of light rained from the sky. Amidst the panicked screams of the crowd, a blood-soaked pope was carried away. The scene shifted again. In front of the New Haven Grand Cathedral, they all witnessed Elia personally behead Adrian. This was the first ending, where the church leadership was wiped out and the order of the Holy Edict fell under Elia's control. So, Ophelia murmured, her target was never my father. It was the Pope. It's not over, Leo said, waving his hand again to show them the second scenario. The gloomy weather vanished, replaced by a fresh sea breeze. They found themselves in a small coastal town not far from the Port Brugge. But the picturesque town was filled with screams and gunfire. In the distance, swarms of monsters were crawling ashore, while church priests rushed to heal the wounded. This was the second ending, where countless priests across the country heard a mysterious call, rejoiced at what they believed was the return of the God of Light, and the Wigner Empire soon became a true land where the holy light had descended. This woman is impressive. She even had a backup plan, Tilly muttered. I really underestimated her. It's still not over, Leo said. It's still not over. Ophelia's voice was filled with shock. If that's the case, then that woman is truly terrifying. The next part has nothing to do with her, Leo said, looking at her with a sigh. It has to do with that old bastard in your family. Her pale eyes blinked, confused. Watch closely and see what King Charlton II did. With a cold smile, Leo brought them the final scene. After he and Elia had fought to a standstill, King Charlton II, the jackal waiting in the wings, seized the opportunity of the church's fall to launch a war. The Dreamlands couldn't perfectly recreate every scene. It could only draw from his memories, allowing the others to experience what he saw and heard. As for the parts of the war he hadn't witnessed, he had to fill in the blanks. Next came the scene where he and Ophelia held hands, facing death together. The city guard, taking advantage of the nullification of all superhuman powers, began purging their enemies. Even a powerhouse like Director Fredericks was easily killed by a common bullet. Tilly watched in disbelief. How was such an ability possible? To make all superhuman powers disappear? How? The wizard girl's question was Leo's question. That was why, of the 3 replays, the final one was the most detailed. The moment he had realized how game-breaking that ability was, he had intentionally committed every detail to memory, so he could present it to them now. And that, Leo said, his voice grave, is what's going to happen. As you can see, every wrong choice leads to severe consequences. So that's how it was. Ophelia stared intently at the scene, at the image of herself and Leo holding hands, calmly facing countless guns as they spoke of their promise. After a long moment, she turned to Leo, her smile gentle. I didn't know it then, but there really was a next time. See? I didn't lie, Leo quipped. Don't I always keep my word? Leo. Ophelia took his hand. After seeing those scenes, she understood everything in an instant. She thought about all the times he had miraculously escaped near-death situations, and a pang of sorrow went through her. He must have gone through countless painful cycles to be able to stand here, joking with her so casually, to be safely reunited with them all. Her pale eyes shimmered. Ophelia rested her head on Leo's shoulder and gently hugged him. Why did you only tell me now? Don't be sad. It's not like I actually died all those times, Leo said, wrapping an arm around her slender waist and comforting her with a smile. It's just a kind of precognitive ability. I just saw the different futures that came from different choices. It's not as tragic as you think. Ophelia looked up at him, but after just a glance, she lowered her head again with a sigh. He's lying again. This was definitely not as simple as predicting the future. It was too real. No one could fabricate such a wealth of authentic detail. It was as if he had personally lived through every one of those moments. But she didn't call him out on it. If he was so unwilling to talk about it, he must have his reasons. Elsewhere in the dreamscape, Tilly was crouched on the ground, carefully studying the third, paused scene. She wasn't particularly surprised by Leo's confession. After all, back in that coastal town, she had already learned some of his secrets, far more than the others, and far earlier. Looking back, if it hadn't been for Leo's rewind-like ability, she would never have recognized the harsh reality of her situation and learned to cherish the good she had. She glanced over at the couple, still locked in a sentimental embrace, and rolled her eyes. Seriously? At a time like this? Getting all mushy. We need to use this precious time to analyze the situation and figure out how to beat our enemies. The wizard girl huffed, then turned back to her research, poring over every detail of the scene. After Leo had shown them the so-called possible futures, Helena's small face was etched with worry. Since brother can see the future, how far into the future can you see? What will happen to us later? Is there no future where we succeed? Leo smiled and gently stroked her soft hair. Of course there is. There's a perfect ending. I've already seen it. What is it? Helena asked eagerly. What kind of ending did you see, brother? Leo thought for a moment, his expression deliberately mysterious. Well, I saw a sunny afternoon. Our family is sitting in the best old shop in New Haven's West End. We've ordered fish and chips, hot coffee, vegetable soup, and the rest is all meat, all of Helena's favorite meat. After we've eaten until our bellies are full, we go shopping. We visit all the fun places all the way until nightfall when the sky is full of stars. There are no stars at night in New Haven, just smog, Tilly thought, eavesdropping. Really, brother? Helena's large, blue eyes lit up. Of course, Leo said with a smile. Helena looked at him, a mix of hope and nervousness on her face. Then, is that best future also the hardest one to achieve? It's not that hard, Leo said, looking around at the group. He had brought them here precisely to find that best solution. This situation was too complex for him to handle alone anymore. No wonder the system had warned him early on that this mission would determine the future course of the world. It seemed that every move made by the Saintess, Elia, and the world's most powerful secular monarch, King Charlton II, would have profound and far-reaching consequences. And the choice of which path the world would take now rested in Leo's hands. An ability that makes all superhuman powers disappear. Tilly paced back and forth, lost in thought, before returning to Leo. According to your replay, not only did your blood magic and circle magic vanish, but so did Ophelia's Dreamland's ability and Director Frederick's werewolf-like transformation. But the sources of those powers are completely different. It's so bizarre. As a mage, Tilly's understanding of magic was profound. She pulled Leo over to the dream version of himself, carefully observing his casting motions from the previous timeline. After you cast the spell, no mana was channeled into the magic sigil. That means the circle wasn't functioning at all. That's almost impossible. It's as if magic doesn't even exist in this world. It's like the fundamental laws of the world were changed. The thought was staggering for a mage. Tilly couldn't accept a world without magic. It's not just one or two rules being changed. Leo rewound the scene slightly, watching himself attempt to use blood magic. Even the vampire's ancient, inherited talent had vanished. His blood core couldn't condense blood into the shapes he imagined, which probably meant his insane healing factor was gone too. But Ethereum crystals still work, Ophelia pointed out, gesturing toward the city guard, where several new Magitech weapons were glowing with a faint blue light. Everything that benefits him is preserved, and everything that threatens him is erased. The more Tilly thought about it, the stranger it became. What on earth is your father? He sounds more like some kind of concept-level true god. That's impossible. He's just like me, Ophelia said quietly, a descendant of Emperor Antaeus. Wait a second. Leo frowned. I almost forgot you two are the same type of anomaly. But I remember you saying your father didn't inherit any of the bloodline talents. That's right, Ophelia nodded. In the last 2 generations, I'm the only one who has awakened the same ability as Emperor Antaeus. When I lose control, I become like a monster. Do you still think that's true now? Leo asked. Even a mage as powerful as Hawkins doesn't dare to disobey the Emperor. I don't believe for a second that Charlton didn't inherit the bloodline talent. He must be an incredibly powerful superhuman himself, possibly even far stronger than the city's top 3. If that was the case, his elderly, frail demeanor was a complete act, one that had even fooled his own children. It would explain why he didn't care about his heirs fighting to the death. With that kind of power, his lifespan was likely very long. As a power-hungry tyrant, he probably had no intention of ever giving up his position. In that case, Ophelia suddenly thought of something. Then he might also be able to use the Dreamlands. Leo finished. Tilly clapped her hands together. That's what I was thinking. How could something so ridiculous happen? It was the Dreamlands all along. It seems the Emperor has the exact same ability as Ophelia. Leo looked at Ophelia. Ever since her failed attempt to brainwash him and her subsequent meltdown outside the manor, her control over the Dreamlands had progressed to the point where she could briefly interfere with and influence reality. If Charlton really did have the same ability, his was likely the ultimate amplified version of that making illusion real power. Realization dawned on him. So that's why he was so determined to kill you. You have the same ability. You'd be able to see through his trump card and potentially interfere with his plans, Tilly said, completely agreeing with Leo's theory. She gave Ophelia a pat on the shoulder. Looks like you're the key to breaking this stalemate. A grand deception, the key to breaking this is me, Ophelia murmured. Leo nodded. If our theory is correct, Charlton has the same ability as you. The fact that he's so wary of you means you must be a threat to him. You might even be able to break this domain he's created. Tilly leaned in, her face alight with anticipation. So think hard. If he can do it, there's no reason you can't. If he changed the rules of this reality, You just have to change them back. It's not that simple, Ophelia said with a bitter smile. Forget the rules. The best I can do is alter the terrain in a small area, and I can only hold it for a short time. Hey, Ophelia, a little confidence. Tilly huffed. Where's that arrogant, high and mighty attitude you usually have? The Dreamlands are your turf. Our lives are going to be in your hands. I know. Ophelia glanced instinctively at Leo. Give me time. I need to study this. I won't let you die. I absolutely won't. Be confident, Leo said with a small smile. I believe in you. You really do have that kind of potential. Leo's understanding of the Dreamlands was nowhere near Ophelia's, and he certainly couldn't manifest things from thin air. But he knew what this power really was, the raw force of belief. He remembered his time locked away in her estate. On the final day, the day he had pushed her until she'd completely snapped, her personal reality had bled into the real world like an apocalypse. Bizarre, impossible things had materialized. It was the first time she had truly tapped into that ability. That's why he said she had the potential. He'd seen it firsthand. Ophelia needed to build unshakable confidence in this, the kind of confidence it would take to truly defeat her father. After they finished discussing the Dreamlands, Leo's expression turned serious as he focused on Ophelia. This is the only path we have left. Are you ready? You need to face your father, defeat him, and maybe even kill him. Since that old bastard was so intent on killing Ophelia, he was the one who had to die, and his throne needed a new occupant. Leo would, of course, back Ophelia. Ophelia was silent for a long moment before she nodded. Seeing her solemn expression, Tilly asked bluntly, I've never seen you this hesitant. You can't bring yourself to do it? Or are you scared? You're not afraid of him, are you? Nonsense. Ophelia sneered. Why would I be afraid of him? Liar, Leo said, piercing through the facade. Ophelia shot him a dark look. I'm the one who can read lies, not you. He's not that powerful, Ophelia, Leo said, his gaze steady. Without this domain, Tilly could crush him with one hand. I know. Ophelia's expression was clouded with worry. But Charlton is a profoundly calculating and terrifying person. No one can outsmart him. I'm worried he has other cards up his sleeve. He's hidden his true strength for so many years. It won't be as simple as we think. So we have to be extremely careful. We can't let our guard down for a second. Listening to Ophelia's nervous rambling, Leo and Tilly exchanged a look of weary resignation. Ophelia was genuinely terrified of her father. This was true even before Charlton had revealed his power. Leo could understand it to some degree. What child wasn't afraid of their father, especially a cold-blooded one like hers? There was a time when Ophelia's entire philosophy revolved around two concepts: control and being controlled. It was why she had once believed that only by completely dominating Leo could she feel safe. That was her way of expressing love. Most people's psychological issues stemmed from their family, and Ophelia was no different. Her issues were rooted in her childhood, the fault of her father, the brutally detached King Charlton II. From a young age, he had taught her both the allure and the horror of power. If Charlton wished it, she could be abandoned to rot in a country estate. And if he wished it, she could be summoned back to the palace to enjoy a life of favor, status, and wealth she had never known. Leo looked at her. Perhaps only when she defeated Charlton in her own mind could she truly be transformed. Sensing the heavy atmosphere, Tilly broke the silence with a joke. How about this? If you can't do the deed, I'll do it for you. Ophelia looked at her. The witch grinned. Don't worry. I'll give him a dignified exit. Not even ash will be left. It'll be completely painless. Ophelia rolled her eyes. You're all heart. But there's another problem I'm worried about right now. What is it? A coup, Ophelia said seriously. Or rather, the legitimacy of power. It's not as simple as you think. She sank into deep thought. Though she had run through this scenario in her mind countless times, now that the day was here, it still felt rushed. Really? Tilly shrugged. You schemers and your convoluted plans. Such a pain. If you ask me, she said casually, we just kill the king, then kill all the competition. If anyone objects, we just keep killing. That's how I handled things in the order of magical arcanists. Whoa, easy there, Leo said, quickly placing a hand on the volatile witch's arm. He had a chaos level to worry about for this mission. If she started massacring her way through the Wigner Empire, he'd be going down with it. And this time he had no more reloads. The situation was this. He had to thwart Elia's schemes, confront King Charlton II, and launch a coup. It was like trying to tap dance on eggshells. Ophelia suddenly looked up at them. I need you to help me stage a play. I can't be the one who becomes the target of public condemnation. Her pale eyes shifted to Leo. He would understand what she meant. Leo nodded. Since she brought up legitimacy, a prince or princess who rebelled while the widely respected old king was still alive would have zero moral high ground. It was far better to act under the pretext of saving the king from his evil advisors or marching on the capital to serve the crown. Classic move, straight out of the history books. You can't be the one on center stage yet, Leo said, stroking his chin thoughtfully. I'll find a few scapegoats for you. Create a villain for the public to hate. Ophelia mimicked his gesture, nodding along. Among the common folk, Hawkins, the dark wizard who's bewitched the king, has a terrible reputation. Not that it's his fault. It's just what happens when Charlton can't be bothered to govern. There they go again, Tilly thought, watching them with an inward eye roll. They were in perfect sync, a natural pair of conspirators. Whenever it came to political maneuvering, their minds worked as one. And then there's the second prince, William, Leo added, determined to get his revenge for their last encounter. William has spent years building influence in the military. His close ties with the marshals and generals have already drawn a lot of attention. That's why almost no one thinks you have a chance at the throne. With the benefit of hindsight, we know the king never cared about William's little power plays, because he was the real one hiding in the shadows. But the public doesn't know that. They'll just see William as the ambitious one, the one who's always coveted the throne. In their eyes, the aging king, and even you, are the victims. So, Leo concluded, since he wants the throne so badly, let's give him a little push. A smile graced Ophelia's lips. The ambitious William commits patricide in a treacherous plot to usurp the throne, plunging the Wigner Empire into chaos. Leo picked up the thread. Forced into a corner, the princess has no choice but to lead her forces in resistance, finally purging the conspirators and executing the mastermind, the second prince. I like that script, Ophelia said. Leo performed a respectful bow, hand over his heart. Her Supreme Majesty, the Empress, will arrive in her loyal city of New Haven tomorrow, to the joyous cheers of her people. Ophelia waved a dismissive, regal hand. At ease, my dear courtier. Hey, are you two rehearsing a play? Tilly grumbled. Don't start celebrating prematurely. Ophelia continued her analysis. That handles the moral justification, but we lack the manpower. Once supernatural powers were limited, the army with its countless guns and cannons became the strongest force on the board. The city guard had steamrolled the city's supernatural practitioners last time, annihilating the BSI. Ophelia looked at the group. Our opponents will be William's city guard, Hawkins's Royal Mage Corps, and finally, the Royal Guard at Hager's Palace. The Royal Mage Corps is ours, Tilly declared instantly. I'll head back to the Isles immediately and convince the Council of Elders to bet on you. Charlton's domain nullifies all magic, but he left a back door, Ethereum crystals. We can use that, Leo said. You'll need to deploy mages skilled in crystal-based magic and bring a massive supply of Ethereum. Don't worry. Tilly waved her hand dismissively. Don't underestimate a magical organization with thousands of years of history. To us, your empire is just new money. Thank you, Ophelia said with a smile. This isn't for free, Tilly shot back. The Council of Elders has a big appetite. Whether the Order of Magical Arcanists can become a legitimate organization depends on whether you take the throne. I will restore the Order to its former glory, Ophelia promised. It will once again become the Continental Magic Association. You'd better keep your word. Of course. With their deal struck, Ophelia continued to analyze the enemy's strength. William's city guard numbers 10,000. That's enough to sweep the entire capital. But what's more dangerous is the 1st Legion stationed north of the city. 60,000 strong. They're the closest army to the capital. We have to finish this before they arrive, or it's over. So, we're short on troops. Very short. This was our biggest problem. The moment the king reacted, the null magic field would render the BSI useless. And unlike William, she didn't command an army. We're short on soldiers, but not on firepower, Leo said suddenly. Everyone turned to him. He gave them a mysterious smile. There's still a big toy parked in the backyard of the old house. Tilly slapped her forehead. Of course. The steam Gundam. I spent days pulling all-nighters studying that thing. Is it mobile yet? Leo asked. Tilly nodded eagerly. I followed your original idea, added the naval cannon, and completely redesigned the fire control and propulsion systems. It's fully operational now. She showed him the blueprints, but Leo just shook his head. One cannon isn't enough. We need overwhelming firepower, so much that it's completely unfair. We need to show them that the times have changed. Tilly went back to modifying the blueprints. We're short on time. I can only add one more. But won't that overload the machine? Ophelia leaned over. With this many turrets, it's practically a land battleship. Can it still fly? We'll position it on a critical route, turning it into a mobile fortress, Leo explained. Firepower is everything. It has to be able to take on the city guard single-handedly. All right, Tilly said, her expression serious. I'll go steal the weapons from Blackwood Academy. Leo, which floor are the naval cannons on? Leo thought for a moment. Basement level 2 of Headmaster Dan's building. Oh, and if you see any other new weapon systems at the school, feel free to bolt them onto the steam Gundam. Tilly nodded again and was about to leave the Dreamlands. Wait, Ophelia suddenly thought of something. Who's going to pilot it? The question stumped them. Leo looked at Tilly. Her mission was the toughest. It was queen against queen, soldier against soldier. She alone had to face both Hawkins and Elia. Putting her in the pilot seat would be a colossal waste of talent. Leo and I both have our own missions. Ophelia fretted. We can't pilot it either. So who's left? It has to be someone we can trust completely. Tilly mused. Leo's gaze drifted silently to Helena, who had been a quiet observer through the whole discussion, her eyes darting from one person to the next, seemingly unable to get a word in. Could I pilot it? Helena asked, timidly raising her hand. Everyone looked at her. Helena's voice was nervous, but her brilliant blue eyes were resolute. Miss Tilly, please teach me how to pilot it. I want to help everyone. But, Tilly hesitated. You need a solid understanding of Etherium crystals and Magitech. The machine requires a complex sequence of crystal magic just to run. One mistake, and the whole system will crash. I won't make a mistake, Miss Tilly. Helena's voice was firm. I've been secretly reading my brother's copy of Gould's Book of Magic. It's really advanced and hard to understand, but I force myself to study it every night. I'm not completely clueless about Magitech theory anymore. So that's what you've been up to, Ophelia said, surprised. No wonder you disappeared every evening. You were hiding in your room studying. Helena's really grown up, Leo said, ruffling her hair with a proud smile. Helena had grown up on the streets, without any formal education, let alone knowledge of university-level Magitech. He could only imagine how much effort a child like her must have put in to even begin to comprehend a book like that. I just want to help my brother. I don't want to be a burden, Helena said with a sheepish grin. Bolstered by her brother's approval, she looked at Tilly again, her voice no longer nervous, only filled with an unprecedented resolve. Miss Tilly, please teach me. I know I can learn to pilot it. All right, Tilly relented. It's all yours then. Good thing we have plenty of time here in the Dreamlands. I think I should be able to teach you. Yes. Thank you, Miss Tilly. Helena beamed. Once the entire plan was laid out, Leo looked at them all. Well then, here's to success. I'll see you all at Hager's Palace. Success. Looking at their expressions, some serious, some fired up, Leo smiled. He had chosen to rely on their strength. No matter the outcome, he wouldn't regret this path. Now, he had only one last thing to do. Contact his ally on the outside, the Duchess of the North, head of the Thornwood family, Evelyn Abraham. The curtain rises the crowded, bustling street teemed with people. Leo, hidden in the throng, quietly watched the slow-moving convoy. After the family meeting in the Dreamlands, only he had returned to the scene. The searing spear of light descended again. Witnessing the assassination attempt on the Pope, Leo melted back into the shadows and followed the church officials. Your Holiness, the carriage is ready, a priest exclaimed, running up in a panic. Quickly, escort His Holiness back to the Grand Cathedral. Another priest shouted, helping the blood-soaked Pope Adrian into the carriage. Just hold on. It's nothing. Adrian waved dismissively from inside, trying to calm his subordinates. Not a fatal wound. I'll be fine in a moment. With a deafening boom, the Pope's carriage was blasted into the sky. Leo almost lost his composure. He hadn't realized Elia's entrance would be quite so explosive. He stepped out from a shadowy street corner and looked at the massive crater in the middle of the road. One of Elia's divine spells had sent the entire convoy of the Order of the Holy Edict tumbling. The scene was pure chaos. At high noon, bathed in sunlight, Elia walked step by step toward the wreckage of the carriage, slowly unfurling her white wings. In a flash, Leo appeared, blocking her path. Leo. Elia frowned slightly. What are you doing here? Just taking a stroll. Leo walked over to the splintered carriage and pulled the soot-covered Pope from the wreckage. Cough, cough. Leo. Quick, inform His Majesty. Adrian clutched his chest, coughing uncontrollably. Leo sized him up. The old man was surprisingly durable. After taking that much punishment, he was still alive. A top-tier cleric indeed. After rescuing the Pope, Leo activated his sigil shield, enveloping him in its protective glow. Across from them, Elia watched his actions with suspicion. You already knew? That precognition ability of yours again. Yep, Leo nodded. So honest. Elia's brow furrowed. She suddenly felt that the Leo before her was a little too calm. Where are Tilly and Ophelia? She asked, glancing around, realizing Leo was alone. A sense of conspiracy began to form in her mind. Leo said, they're busy, but you'll be seeing Tilly soon enough. Leo, what exactly are you up to? Elia asked, her suspicion growing. Back at the house, what did you do after you called them into your room? U.S. A sly grin spread across Leo's face. That's a secret. Since she loved being so cryptic, Leo decided to play the part of the riddle master himself this time. Playing games, Elia scoffed, stepping closer. I was only planning to kill these men. Since you've walked right into my trap, I'll just take you back to the holy mountain as well. As she spoke, she slowly extended a hand. Leo felt the ground beneath his feet begin to tremble. His powerful six-circle defensive magic was nothing to her. The entire section of earth he was standing on began to crack and was pulled inexorably toward Elia. Come here, she said, her white wings spread wide. As Leo drew closer, she offered a serene, angelic smile. You didn't even bring Tilly with you. What is this if not walking into a trap? It's not too late to surrender. I've told you before, you can't stop me. You're about to witness the descent of the holy light. Leo, Adrian managed, lifting his head with great effort. Don't let her succeed. Run. Go to his majesty. The king has a way to deal with her. The saintess of the sea won't escape. Why didn't you say so earlier? Leo shot him a look. If he had known Charlton had that kind of power, he wouldn't have fought Elia to a standstill before. Elia glared coldly at the Pope, reaching for his throat with an invisible force, trying to yank him out of the magical shield. Wait. Leo once again stood in front of the Pope. Elia, how about we work together? Elia froze, her gaze turning even warier. I pleaded with you before and you refused. Now I want to talk about cooperation? Leo, do you take me for a fool? What are you really trying to do? Just calm down, Leo said, looking toward Hager's palace. He had only been trying to stall Elia for a few minutes. The time was about right. A terrifying, earthquake-like tremor shook the city. Finally, he saw it, the next part of the plan unfolding. Dazzling beams of magic were relentlessly bombarding Hager's palace, blasting the magnificent royal architecture into rubble. The witch was venting all the frustration and anger she had accumulated from their last battle. Elia watched the figure attacking the palace, her eyes narrowing. High above Hager's palace, Tilly, dressed in a white gown with fabricated white wings, casually tossed a light spell downward. She had disguised herself as Elia, and the light spell was the closest thing she knew to divine magic. After a sustained bombardment, feeling she hadn't made a strong enough impression, Tilly thought for a moment and then shouted to the city below, "For the holy light." Her voice, amplified by magic, echoed across the sky. After that declaration, she casually threw another high circle spell downward. This time, however, her magic was blocked by a surge of powerful arcane energy. Tilly looked over to see the Royal Mage Corps had arrived. Who are you? Hawkins, their leader, materialized in front of her, blocking her path. Tilly didn't answer. She just flapped her fake wings and flew toward the Grand Cathedral. A blue shimmer, and Hawkins once again appeared in her way. Why are you disguised as the saintess of the sea? He demanded, his gaze dark. What is your goal? You figured it out that quickly? Tilly mused. No wonder he's the chief. Not that she had expected to fool everyone. Leo had told her to just make a big scene. Thinking of the next step, Tilly continued flying toward Leo's position. Trying to run. Hawkins's spellcasting was nearly instantaneous. With a surge of immense power, a massive blue magic circle materialized behind him. It aimed at Tilly like a cannon battery, and then a meteor shower of light beams rained down, blanketing the sky as they shot toward her. Tilly frowned at the deluge of light, not because the spell was particularly difficult, but because it looked incredibly familiar. Seeing the meteors with their blue tails relentlessly pursuing her, she had no choice but to increase her speed, weaving through the sky. Strange. Academy magic? Tilly glanced back at the persistent Hawkins, thinking to herself, he's using standard Academy magic, and a rare branch at that. Astromagic? Only the Order of Magical Arcanists still has records of that school. But I've never seen him before. With that thought, she continued to dodge his magical assault while contacting Elder Rollins. A trap sprung astromagic. President Tilly? Why do you ask? After a brief explanation, Elder Rollins quickly said, Don't worry, I'll ask the other elders. I'll get back to you shortly. The communication ended. Tilly glanced around and saw the meteors were still hot on her trail, impossible to shake. Annoyed, she stopped in midair. Just as the spells were about to hit, Tilly uttered a short incantation. All the beams of light strangely slowed, then gradually hung suspended in the sky as if their power had been snuffed out. This is deconstruction. Hawkins stared in astonishment as all his astral magic, like a pack of tame pets, obediently turned around and shot back toward him with terrifying speed. "Have a taste of your own medicine," Tilly said with a wicked grin. Hawkins's heart lurched. He instantly created distance, hastily erecting his strongest magical shield. Hearing the roar of fury behind her, Tilly smiled and left the scene, flying straight for the Grand Cathedral to rendezvous with Leo. Just as she was about to arrive, Elder Rollins responded. "President Tilly, this Hawkins you sent me a picture of, he must have changed his appearance. But his style of magic is so rare that it wasn't hard to track him down. This Hawkins is likely the son of Elder Gory from 2 councils ago." Elder Gory's specialty was the astral school. It was an ancient school, but in the end, only he and his son were left. After Elder Gory died, his son vanished. I never expected him to betray the order and pledge allegiance to the Wigner Empire. You should be careful, President. The astral school was always ostracized. He likely harbors a deep resentment for the order of magical arcanists. So that's what Tilly thought. She'd never had much interest in the internal squabbles between the order's various schools, but if that was his origin. Landing on the street, Tilly glanced back up at Hawkins. After being bombarded by his own spell, he looked disheveled and was seething with rage. "Guess we're settling old scores and new ones all at once," Tilly mused. She looked around. Everyone's grudges, everyone's conflicts were erupting here and would end here. New Haven, right now, truly felt like something out of the astral school's fatalistic philosophy. "Is that Tilly?" Elia asked warily, watching the witch descend. "Haha, was I convincing?" Tilly's wings vanished, and her face reverted to her own. "I wasn't going to shout for the holy light, though. Too dramatic." Elia glanced at Leo, suddenly understanding what he was up to. "So the traitors have all gathered." Hawkins's voice dripped with cold fury as he stared at the group on the street. "The Order of Magical Arcanists. Tilly, the Saintess of the Sea, Elia, since you're all here." His eyes lit up. This was a God-given opportunity. If His Majesty activated the null magic field, these troublesome enemy leaders, the thorns in the Empire's side, would all be caught in one fell swoop. "You're all dead." Hawkins laughed maniacally and immediately ordered the royal mages to contact the king. Something's wrong. Elia didn't know the source of his confidence, but she knew her original plan was no longer viable. She had to activate her backup plan and target the regional churches. She was about to use a divine spell to escape the chaotic scene. But in the next second, on Leo's command, Tilly cast a spell, interrupting her. "Don't even think about running. If we're going down together," Tilly said with a malicious grin. Seeing Elia frustrated again and again today was bringing her immense joy. "You too." Elia dodged Tilly's cheap shot, glaring at them in frustration. She immediately spread her wings, preparing to fly out of New Haven by force. But as she rose into the air, she was surrounded by the royal mages. No matter where she flew, they pursued her relentlessly. "Stall them for His Majesty." Hawkins sneered, summoning another wave of astral magic. At the same time, the entire Royal Mage Corps began casting in unison. The sky flickered with a spectacular display of brilliant magical lights. Leo looked up, enjoying the show. He loved watching mages get into brawls. Whether they were good or not, the visual effects were always maxed out. In the midst of the chaos, Elia noticed Leo watching the fun below. Filled with irritation, she flashed in front of him, making him jump. "Leo, is this your idea of cooperation? You're clearly just stalling for time." Leo blinked. "The cooperation is real, but so is the stalling." "Stay away from him." Tilly charged back in, slamming a wall of magical energy into Elia and sending her stumbling back. She then stood protectively in front of Leo. "We have a common enemy now," Leo told Elia. "An enemy that wants to annihilate both of us. So, how about it? Ready to cooperate? Pull off something big." "Liar." Elia's gaze turned icy. "You're always lying. Not a single truthful word ever comes out of your mouth." "This one's true, I swear." Leo protested. "Charlton is a serious problem. We can only solve this crisis if we work together. Believe me or not, it doesn't matter. You'll see soon enough. Why are a bunch of dead people arguing? Just die already." Hawkins roared, his face twisted in a grin. His incantation this time was incredibly long. Under the surge of immense power, The magic circle expanded until it summoned a massive meteor from within. The meteor was large enough to obliterate the entire street. Everyone looked up at the impending doom of the astral magic. Meddlesome fool! Tilly and Elia shouted in near-perfect unison. One casually unleashed a soul torrent, the other a divine judgment. The massive meteor was blasted to pieces in the sky, crumbling into countless harmless pebbles. The backlash nearly tore Hawkins apart. He let out a pained grunt and fell from the sky, crashing to the ground. "Kill him," Leo ordered. Tilly and Elia glanced at each other. The next second, they both charged toward Hawkins. "Quick! Protect Master Hawkins!" the royal mages cried out in panic. Tilly unleashed a burst of power, a ferocious torrent of magic that sent all the mages flying. Elia, with perfect coordination, cast a divine spell. A spear of light materialized high above Hawkins's head. One strike, and the spear would pierce his skull. The seasoned chief mage couldn't hide the terror on his face. This terrifying attack would shatter his magical shield. Hawkins realized not only had he gravely underestimated the two women before him, but he never imagined they could actually work together after fighting like that. And with such unnerving synchronicity, Leo watched the doomed Hawkins. Just as Elia was about to strike, her spear of light suddenly dimmed, then fell harmlessly against Hawkins's shield. "Did you forget to eat breakfast, Elia?" Tilly taunted. "No, this shouldn't be happening." Elia stared intently at Hawkins. At full power, his shield couldn't have blocked that. Hawkins, realizing he was still alive, looked stunned for a moment. Then it dawned on him, and he looked excitedly in one direction, the direction of Hagrid's palace. His Majesty had finally made his move, and through his magical senses, Hawkins could feel the city guard closing in. He let out a sigh of relief, then threw his head back and laughed at Elia and Tilly. "His Majesty has made his move. You're finished." "Finished? Ha ha." A desperate alliance as a trusted confidant of King Charlton II, Hawkins knew that the king had long desired to crush their rival, the kingdom of Norsgal. If the de facto leader of the Sea of Sistun died here in New Haven, the enemy nation would lose more than half its threat. The king could finally realize his ambition. The Imperial army would sweep across the continent, waging one final war to end all wars. Meanwhile, Leo walked up to the bewildered Elia. I'm losing the connection to my followers' faith. I can't hear their voices anymore." Interesting. Tilly looked up at the sky, trying to sense this so-called null magic field. Just like Leo said, the mana in the domain is thinning, fading. The fundamental laws of the world are being subtly rewritten as if magic never existed in the first place. Fascinating. She struggled to gather her remaining magic to send one last message. "Elder Marjorie, Elder Rollins, it's time. Please get your people in position. Oh, and remember to record the data on mana concentration and so on. This ability is significant enough to establish a new school of study in the Order. We have to research this thoroughly later." The intermittent magical communication with the elders abruptly cut off. Elia looked at Tilly, surprised. As a mage, Tilly showed no signs of panic at the disappearance of magic. In fact, she was calmly pulling out a worn, antique staff she had been carrying. The staff looked heavy, with a gnarled wooden knob at the top and several sharp thorns. It looked like it would do some bloody work if swung at someone's face. Tilly held an Ethereum crystal in her left hand and weighed the staff in her right. The crystal flared to life, and with a ferocious roar, she charged, bringing the staff down on Hawkins's head. "Come on, I'm not afraid of you even without magic. Oomph. We're on a level playing field now. You think I can't take you?" Elia stared, dumbfounded, at the sight of mages engaging in hand-to-hand combat with their staves. "Ethereum crystals were the back door Charlton left open," Leo explained to her. "He thought it would make his Magitech troops invincible, but he didn't know the Order of Magical Arcanists are masters of this stuff too. Well, the spells inscribed on the crystals are relatively simple, and they can only cast one at a time, so it might look a bit clunky. Sorry about the mess," Leo added, looking up. The witch had countless Ethereum crystals hanging from her belt. The one she'd just activated caused the ground to shake violently upon impact, a shockwave not much weaker than a true circle spell. Still, Ethereum crystals were external tools. With magic pockets disabled, carrying enough of them was a major problem. Leo looked into the distance. He could already hear the approach of the city guard. In a null magic field, a conventional army was the most terrifying weapon of all. Elia also sensed the approaching troops. She grabbed Leo, and a faint white halo enveloped them. She was still trying to escape. "You can still use your divine power?" Leo was surprised. Though the light around them was much dimmer, her supernatural ability remained. Even the witch was now resorting to bashing heads with a staff. He had to admit, Ilia's power was on another level. It seemed Charlton's domain had its limits. It couldn't suppress someone at the demigod tier because he himself had not reached that level. His power was likely at the very peak of the supernatural spectrum, but no higher. Leo looked at the faint halo. We're in the Whitechapel district, not far from Charlton, and you can still do this. If I let you get any farther away, who knows what you could do? He couldn't let her leave. The whole plan to shift the conflict would be pointless. He spoke quickly. You won't get far. Charlton's domain covers half the country, and it's only going to get stronger. You'll die within the borders of the Wigner Empire. Is that so? Ilia watched him, her trust wavering. It's true. Leo felt like he was using up a lifetime's worth of sincerity for this one deception. He looked her straight in her pale gold eyes. We're in the same boat now. How about a temporary alliance? We team up, take out the king first. If we don't deal with him, we're all trapped here. You and Tilly are his biggest threats. He won't spare any of us. Ilia, you were deceived. We all were. Charlton has been planning a war for a long time. This domain is his secret weapon. If you don't believe me, go ahead and ask if troops have been mobilized in these specific regions. And the frontline armies are being re-equipped. All he needs to do is give the order, and 12 legions will storm the borders of both nations. So, Leo said, his gaze intense, you don't want to see the holy city of Siston destroyed, do you? You know the difference in our military strength. It's why you pretended to form an alliance of nations, but only ever engage in skirmishes, never a real war. Because you know the terrifying power of modern magitech industry. The Wigner Empire is unbeatable. Leo, did you foresee all of this? Ilia hesitated, not releasing her spell, but she could feel how difficult it was to use her power now, as if someone was blocking her connection to her followers. New Haven was becoming a black hole, a dead zone in her perception. Without the fervent prayers of countless believers, without that spiritual support, panic and frustration began to creep into her heart. When she looked back at Leo, who was staring at her with such intensity, for a moment, she couldn't meet his gaze. In the past, he had always been able to find the optimal solution in the most desperate of situations. And in the past, she, the weak priestess, would have instinctively trusted him, relied on him. She had spent her life searching for light, and for a time, Leo had been that light. Have you decided, Ilia? Leo gripped her wrist, holding it tight. I'm not forcing you, but we're out of time. He glanced toward the end of the street, where the figures of the city guard had appeared. His voice grew more urgent. If you don't trust me, if you're worried I'll betray you, then we can form a temporary alliance. We deal with the king first. We can worry about the rest later. All right. Ilia sighed. It's not that I trust you. It's that I have no other choice. I've long suspected there was something wrong with Charlton. None of the assassins sent after his men ever returned. If you're confident you can kill him, then it's a good outcome for the Church of Holy Light as well. Good. Then I'll tell you the plan. Leo's expression remained calm, but inwardly, he let out a massive sigh of relief. Ilia's gaze shifted to the city guard, her expression turning cold. She finally drew her old friend from her days as a priestess, a weapon Leo recognized immediately. A mace, more than capable of crushing a skull with ease. Judgment. Ilia stared at the mace in her hand. Judgment. It had been a gift from Leo after they met, back when she was just a priestess. She never thought that after 4 years, she would have a reason to use it again. Back then, she didn't understand why such a crude, heavy bludgeon would have such a name. But after losing Leo, she had an epiphany. Only with power could one pass judgment upon the world. Without power, she was nothing. Ilia became a fervent believer in power above all else. It was the initial motivation for her ascent to godhood. Recalling memories of old battles, she swung the heavy mace. The simple, unadorned swing made the air crackle with a terrifying explosive sound. A royal mage in her path was instantly obliterated, a gruesome death. Seeing Ilia join the fray, Tilly, who had been besieged by the royal mages, grinned. 4 years, and your skill with a mace hasn't gotten rusty at all. This is who I've always been, Ilia said, glancing at Tilly, who was wreaking havoc with her staff. A mage who can beat her enemies to death with a staff is far more surprising, don't you think? Who says mages can't be good fighters? The Order has schools that specialize in close-quarters combat. Tilly broke through the crowd, her eyes locking onto the disheveled Hawkins. Elder Rollins had already investigated him for her. The man had helped the king kill many of their colleagues from the Order and had even assisted the Wigner Church in their widespread witch hunts. She had to deal with this traitor to the magical world today, or he would cause endless trouble later. Seeing Tilly charge at him, Hawkins quickly raised his staff to block. Although His Majesty's null magic field prevented him from using his full magical potential, the same was true for his opponent. The deciding factor would be their equipment. The moment their staves clashed, the Ethereum crystals embedded in them lit up, and the defensive spells inscribed within enveloped Hawkins. Not only that, but the entire Mage Corps, under his command, focused their energy, creating an impenetrable defensive field. Watching Tilly get thrown back by their barrier, Hawkins finally breathed a sigh of relief. As members of the Royal Mage Corps, every mage's weapon was priceless. The expensive crystals and complex magical runes on their staves were designed precisely for situations where their own mana was insufficient. The witch can't touch us, Hawkins ordered. The city guard will be here to surround them any minute. Hold on. The second prince's army will sweep them all away. But the Saintess of the Sea is charging us, one of the mages cried out, pointing in terror. What are you afraid of? Hawkins roared. Don't be stingy with the power reserves in your staves. Get everything you've got. Despite his brave words, as the expressionless Saintess drew closer, Hawkins grew increasingly uneasy. He instinctively pushed the power output of his staff to its maximum. Elia, the city guard is here, Leo shouted from a street corner where he had lifted a sewer grate. Come with me. Leave this to Tilly. According to the plan, Tilly and the infiltrated members of the Order would hold off a portion of the city guard here. Elia couldn't afford to get bogged down. This wasn't her battlefield. All right. Elia nodded, then looked back at Tilly. I'll help her one more time. Wielding judgment again had brought back fond memories. Elia found she still enjoyed solving problems with physical means. She stared impassively at the thick magical light, raised judgment, and brought it down with all her might. Boom! With a deafening roar, Elia's terrifying brute force tore a hole straight through the defensive field. The shockwave radiated outward at incredible speed, and the entire street shook as if hit by an earthquake. Tilly stared at the devastated street. Even though she was prepared, she was still stunned by Elia's power. For years had passed. She had thought that playing the part of the kind Saintess would have dulled Elia's combat skills, but the woman's capacity for violence had only grown. Thanks, Tilly said, shooting Elia a quick glance while her mind raced. There was no way she could win a close-quarters fight against this woman. From now on, she'd have to maintain a safe distance when they argued. You're welcome. With those words, Elia vanished with Leo down into the street. With the defensive field broken, the royal mages at the forefront were instantly crushed, leaving behind a gory mess of mangled corpses. What kind of monsters are you? Hawkins, his face covered in blood, screamed through clenched teeth. In all his years as the chief royal mage, he had never faced such opponents. The second prince, Prince William. Hawkins scrambled toward the other end of the street. When he saw the tide of city guard soldiers approaching, he shouted in joyous relief. Fire! Open fire! Kill these enemies of His Majesty. Don't let a single one escape. Finally, Tilly muttered, frowning at the rows of black muzzles. She broke off her pursuit and quickly ducked into the labyrinth of surrounding alleyways. In the next instant, a dense volley of gunfire erupted, the sound of cannons deafening. Dodging the bombardment, Tilly scanned her surroundings. The entire district in front of the Grand Cathedral was swarming with heavily armed soldiers. Even with reinforcements from the Order, this was going to be a brutal, bloody fight. Tilly took a deep breath and offered a silent prayer. I'll do my part. The rest is up to you. Leo, you have to succeed. The underbelly of New Haven was as dark and damp as ever. Leo held a glowing Ethereum crystal, using its light to quickly study a map of the sewer network. You and Tilly are major threats to the king, but you're the main one, Leo said, walking briskly ahead. The moment you die, the sea's power will be crippled, and he'll seize the opportunity to declare war. So the bulk of the city guard will focus on hunting us, Elias said, nodding in understanding. But because of Tilly and the Order, the 10,000-strong army will have to split their forces, which lessens the pressure on us. On the way to Charlton's lair, Hager's palace, there's a perfect spot for an ambush, Leo said, referring to the moat and the few large drawbridges separating the East End from the administrative district. That area was designed as the last line of defense for the palace, but now Leo could use it to completely isolate the king. After all, when it was built, who could have imagined a steam Gundam would be squatting there? You have another ally? Elia raised an eyebrow. It seems your plan is quite thorough. It's Helena, Leo said, turning to see the surprise on her face. Helena? By herself. One person is enough. I can't believe it, Elia murmured. That gentle little girl can now hold her own. Even with the city guard split, that's still several thousand soldiers. You'll see, Leo said, folding the map. He was more familiar with New Haven's streets and alleys than its complex underground. The sewers didn't lead to the palace, so they have to follow a specific route, a shortcut to their destination. The rest of this is outside your range of precognition, isn't it? Elia asked suddenly. What makes you say that? I can see the tension on your face, Elia said with a small smile. I may not be able to read expressions like Ophelia, but I can tell everyone, including you, is on edge. I'm guessing what comes next carries an unpredictable risk. Everything is under control, Leo said flatly. As long as Elia's divine persona existed, Leo wouldn't tell her the whole truth. No matter how she acted now, half of her was still the enemy. Most importantly, he couldn't reveal that he only had one life left. Her temporarily allied human side might seem friendly now, but what if her personality suddenly flipped, dominated by her divine self? It was a gamble he couldn't afford to take. All right, Elia said. She could feel his wariness, and a strange bitterness welled up inside her. Your ability. You've already seen other outcomes, haven't you? Elia asked again. Can you tell me what happened to us? Between us. Leo chuckled. A lot. Thinking of his past battles of wits with her, he said bluntly, we both won and lost against each other, but in the end, we both lost everything. The holy city of Sistun fell, the holy mountain was destroyed, and everything you worked for these past 4 years turned to dust. What? Elia's voice was filled with shock. Even the holy mountain was destroyed? How could that have happened? Even with the full might of the Wigner Empire's army, pushing all the way to the holy mountain on its high plateau seemed impossible. Was it true, what Leo had said? Had they all been played by King Charlton too? Did he possess some even more terrifying power or trump card? It was all Charlton's damn fault. Leo cursed with feigned hatred. He certainly wasn't going to admit he was the one who told the witch to destroy the holy city. I see, Elia murmured to herself. She had considered the possibility of Leo's involvement in the holy mountain's destruction. She knew her plan wasn't flawless, that her vast number of followers was her weakness. But deep down, she didn't want to believe Leo would do such a thing. In her heart, Leo wasn't that kind of person. From the moment she met him, he had always been saving people. He had shown her that this dark world wasn't just filled with despair. He had been her light. In that case, Elia's voice turned sharp and ruthless. King Charlton too has to die. The plot thickens. Leo led Elia through the sewer hub for a while longer before they returned to the surface. The bright sunlight made him squint. It was a rare clear day in New Haven. He scanned his surroundings warily. The entire city was under lockdown. The once bustling streets of the East End were deserted, every door shut tight. Next, we meet Helena outside the palace. We have to avoid being spotted by the city guard, Leo said, motioning for her to follow. Elia kept close as they moved silently through the narrow alleyways. By the way, where's Ophelia? Elia asked suddenly. Since Tilly and Helena both had roles in his plan, Ophelia must as well. Her mission is crucial, Leo said. She should be in a meeting with her confidants right now. A meeting? Elia raised an eyebrow. Plotting a coup? Correct. A shadow crossed Elia's face. It seems you plan to put her on the throne. A clever calculation, Leo. If your plan succeeds, you'll be the one who benefits the most. We were forced into this, Leo said, looking back at her. It's the only way to solve our current predicament. Isn't that a win-win? No, you're deflecting, Elia countered with a cold snort. Don't think I can't see what you're doing. You've dragged me onto your side to wear down my strength. A brilliant move, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. But you have no choice, Leo said simply. It was a gambit she had to play along with. In New Haven's West End, at the old house on Riverfront Road, Ophelia stared at a tactical map of the city spread across the coffee table. A few core BSI agents were gathered around it, discussing their upcoming missions in hushed tones. The atmosphere in the living room was heavy and tense. The acrid smell of smoke filled the air. Ophelia wrinkled her nose and glanced at Director Fredericks. He was staring at the map with a furrowed brow, chain-smoking one cigarette after another. He hadn't stopped since the meeting began. Ophelia hated the smell, but she didn't stop her old subordinate from using it to ease his tension. The upcoming operation was, after all, a matter of life and death for all of them. By the way, Your Highness. Noticing her gaze, Fredericks quietly stubbed out his half-smoked cigarette in the ashtray. Are we really safe here? William has spies everywhere. He was suddenly curious why the princess had chosen this old West End house as the headquarters for plotting a coup. She owned plenty of secret estates, after all. There's no place safer, Ophelia said without explanation. Really? Fredericks scratched his thinning hair, thinking that one cannonball from the city guard would reduce this dilapidated house to rubble. That's not our concern right now, Fredericks. The people I asked you to secretly contact, where are they? We've smuggled them into New Haven, Fredericks reported. But the city's under lockdown. They might be a little late. Ophelia's fingers tapped unconsciously on the map. They're the last piece. As she spoke, a knock came at the door. They're here. Frederick stood up. Ophelia quickly opened the door to find an old man and a middle-aged woman standing outside. It was Elder Rollins and Elder Marjorie of the Order of Magical Arcanists, Tilly's right and left hands. You've finally arrived, Ophelia said, welcoming them into the living room. The BSI agents all turned to look at the newcomers. They all knew of the infamous order. While these two weren't as notorious as the Calamity Witch, they were still high on the most wanted list. I never thought. Fredericks lit another cigarette. That the BSI would one day be working with the Order of Magical Arcanists. Consider it an honor, Elder Marjorie said, glancing at him with clear disdain. Marjorie, Elder Rollins hissed. Have you forgotten what the president told us? We're all in the same boat now. I've heard that Orthodox mages look down on humans, see them as ants, Frederick said with a careless smile. So it's true. Hey, why is everyone arguing the moment I get here? A travel-worn Captain Raymonds walked into the living room, flanked by his escorts, the Shadow Guard Jason and Carolyn. Captain Raymonds, Ophelia nodded, then looked around the room. Aside from the vampires, everyone is here now. Her voice was clear and pleasant, but carried a certain weight. Elder Rollins said something very true just now. We are all in the same boat. If any part of this operation fails, we will all die in New Haven. But if we succeed, everyone in this room, whether you are mages seeking acceptance from the world or supernatural agents misunderstood as madmen and dangers to society, your fates will change forever. I cannot promise you a better future, but I believe it's better to hold your destiny in your own hands. Don't you agree? Her Highness is right. Captain Raymond stood and applauded. Fredericks glanced at the rising star of the police force, thinking that it was no wonder the kid got promoted so fast. But the princess's words had worked. The atmosphere shifted from tense and somber to something more defiant. Fighting for our destiny had elevated a conspiracy meeting for a coup into something far grander. Lady Ophelia, we've brought what you asked for, Elder Rollins said, opening a suitcase he had carried in. Inside, rows of Ethereum crystals inscribed with special magic runes glowed faintly. Illusion and disguise spells. They can alter the agent's appearances. If they put on robes and carry fake staves, they'll look identical to Hawkins's Royal Mage Corps. No ordinary person will be able to tell the difference. Ophelia picked up a crystal and nodded in satisfaction. The Order of Magical Arcanists truly delivered. Thank you. A hint of pride touched Elder Marjorie's smile. Those hacks in the Empire only know how to use these things for Magitech cannons. They don't realize that Gould's standard Ethereum crystal was stolen from us. The prototypes were the various magic orbs and crystals created by the Order. Crystal magic was meant to have infinite possibilities. Impressive, Frederick said. Ophelia looked down at the map, as if gazing down upon the entire city of New Haven. Everyone go. Let's raise some hell. The vampires gambit an hour after the two elders, Captain Raymonds, and the agents had departed. The old house received its final guest. Monica, dressed in a long lady's coat and a wide-brimmed sun hat, knocked on the door. As Ophelia welcomed her into the living room, she couldn't help but comment, "It's the middle of summer, and you're dressed like that. Are you trying to get noticed by the city guard?" "I try to be as inconspicuous as possible, but what can I do? I'm a vampire," Monica said, placing her hat on the coat rack and curiously examining the house. "So this is where matriarch Evelyn used to live. I heard she could never bear to leave. I thought it must be something special. I don't see anything special about it either. It's small and old," Ophelia said, pouring her guest a cup of black tea. "But the reason your matriarch couldn't bear to leave had nothing to do with comfort. It's because Leo lives here, obviously." Monica sniffed, sitting down across from Ophelia. "Thank you, but I don't drink tea." "Oh, right. I forgot," Ophelia said with a shake of her head. "You're not Evelyn." She couldn't help but think that a vampire who adored human food and cluttered her coffee table with junk food was probably a once-in-a-millennium anomaly like Evelyn. "How is Evelyn these days?" Ophelia asked casually. "She's about to lose her mind," Monica sighed. After she heard what was happening in the capital, she lost her appetite, couldn't focus on family affairs, and just paced around her room anxiously. If you hadn't repeatedly warned her against it, she would have dumped all her work on me and come here herself. Her coming here would be useless, Ophelia said seriously. The situation in the capital is a whirlpool. Once you're in, it's hard to get out. As matriarch, Evelyn is far more useful to me leading a complete Thornwood family, far from this mess. The matriarch understands. She's just so worried about you all. Monica thought of Ophelia's plan. A Thornwood family far from the conflict would indeed play a very special role in this chaos. Evelyn was too close to the situation to see clearly. The princess, on the other hand, had a much clearer long-term vision. She had probably been setting up this particular chess piece for a long time. After the pleasantries, they got down to business. Your Highness, we've done what you and Mr. Sterling asked of us. She gestured to the door. A moment later, Joe led in a young man dressed in the rough clothes of a farmer. Long time no see, Ophelia said, nodding to the elder vampire, Joe. Joe grunted in response, then kicked the young man to the ground. The man didn't even dare to lift his head, kneeling on the floor, trembling and silent. This is, Ophelia looked him over. The eldest prince of the Winter Kingdoms, Monica said with a pleasant smile. Impressive, Ophelia said, her tone filled with praise. I thought it would take longer. I didn't expect you to succeed so quickly. Just a tribe of barbarians, Monica said with a laugh. But you have matriarch Evelyn to thank for this mission success. Oh, after Evelyn inherited the family's sacred artifact, the Codex Sanguine, her power skyrocketed. She has now been promoted to a prince-level vampire. She personally led this assassination mission. The entire leadership of the largest tribe in the Winter Kingdoms has been wiped out by our family. The heads of the barbarian chief and his 4 sons are currently on display in our reception hall. Is that so? Ophelia said, surprised. A 276-year-old vampire prince. She's made history. Evelyn's talent is indeed remarkable. Her promotion doesn't surprise me, Joe said with a sigh. If only the Duke could have lived to see this day. It was the power of love, Monica chuckled. That girl had been working herself to the bone, training like a maniac, so she wouldn't be a burden to anyone. Please thank her for me. And thank you, as well, Ophelia said with a smile. She was well aware of the vampire's capabilities. During the rise of the Wigner Empire, General Abraham's special unit had been incredibly impressive. Vampires were natural master assassins, perfect for night raids. That unit, composed entirely of high-ranking vampires, had moved like ghosts in the darkness, assassinating countless enemy generals. She never thought Evelyn, so soon after taking power, would replicate that feat. So what do you plan to do with this one? Monica asked. Ophelia looked at the kneeling barbarian prince. Not yet. The time isn't right. The Winter Kingdoms, a nation of various tribes, bordered the frigid northern territories of the Wigner Empire. Historically, they had often been at war with the Empire. Recently, at Elia's instigation, skirmishes had become more frequent, with signs of a potential southern invasion. Of course, while they made a lot of noise, they wouldn't dare to launch a full-scale invasion. At most, they would raid a few caravans. After the Empire's Industrial Revolution, the times had changed. The once feared northern barbarians had become more known for their singing and dancing than their fighting. Is he completely under your control? He won't leak the plan, Ophelia asked, still cautious. Don't worry, Joe said, lifting the trembling prince. He is now my blood thrall, his mind and can never betray me. I have absolute control over him. So this is the legendary bloodkin, Ophelia murmured. Never betrays. That sounds like a very useful ability. An errant thought crossed her mind. If she had that power, she would have turned Leo into her blood thrall long ago. Why bother with all the trouble of brainwashing? While Ophelia conversed with her vampiric guests, a steady stream of intelligence flowed into the old house. A dozen shadow guards continuously relayed information from across the capital, which Ophelia then used to assess the situation and plan her next move. Seeing that she wasn't needed for the moment, Monica sat quietly on the sofa, waiting patiently. With nothing else to do, she watched Ophelia issue commands to various teams, fascinated to see how the 5th princess intended to direct this grand play in the capital. Some of the people you're arresting are putting up a fight. Ophelia raised an eyebrow. Then skip their families and move on to the next. Pick the soft persimmon to pinch. Our goal isn't to actually arrest them, after all. After the orders were relayed, the shadow guards scurrying through the living room all departed, and the room fell silent again. You're having the agents disguise themselves as the Royal Mage Corps? and then arresting the opposition in the second prince's name? Monica asked curiously. It's not entirely a fabrication. William is indeed hunting for assassins, Ophelia said with a smile. But I feel his search isn't thorough enough. The wealthy districts of New Haven, the manors of the great families in the East End. Why won't he touch them? Since he won't, I'll help him. Monica did a quick mental calculation. From what I heard, the people being arrested include not only officials who oppose the second prince, but also a lot of neutral parties like the old nobility and members of the Imperial Council. You're really stirring up trouble everywhere, offending everyone. The second prince will soon incur the wrath of the masses, Joe observed, feeling he had still underestimated the fifth princess's cunning. And that's not all, Ophelia said, looking at a shadow guard who was approaching with a message from Captain Raymond's. Seizing control at the border of New Haven's West End and downtown. In a sprawling factory district, a stern-faced Captain Raymond's was leading his police force in a series of strict inspections, going from one factory to the next. Officer Leon, watching the furious factory owners at the gates, quietly sidled up to Raymond's. Captain, is this really an order from the second prince? I don't think he has the authority to issue direct commands to the police. Captain Raymond's shot the young officer a glare. Just do as you're told. Stop asking so many questions. Leon had no choice but to step forward and negotiate with the factory owners. What the hell do you people think you're doing? Don't you know the machines can't be stopped? Do you have any idea how much we lose in a single day of shutdown? His Majesty himself said that all factories in the city must remain operational during wartime. Who the hell does the NHPD think it is? Get your supervisor over here. Do you know my son-in-law is on the Imperial Council? The police department's sudden, forceful demand that a large number of factories shut down immediately sparked outrage. Leon was at a loss. The owners were uncooperative, and each one dropped a bigger name than the last. Finally, he had to call over Captain Raymond's. Raymond strode forward, his face a mask of impatience. All right, you'll live if you make a little less money. I'm telling you, this is a direct order from His Highness, the second prince. Captain, you have to at least give us a reason. It's Captain Raymond's of the Inspectorate. Leon, emboldened by his superior's presence, puffed out his chest. TCH, a factory owner muttered to the crowd. Look at him, acting all high and mighty. Just another one of the second prince's dogs. A reason? Raymond sneered. Fine, I'll give you a reason. He scanned the crowd, his expression leaving no room for argument. During the exposition, an assassin infiltrated the capital and attempted to assassinate His Majesty. The king is now gravely injured, his condition unknown. Under these circumstances, the second prince has been forced to lock down the city. All 6 districts of New Haven are under martial law. Every single household and business will be thoroughly searched. Do you understand now? Raymond's speech sparked an even bigger commotion. Factory owners, workers, and even nearby residents who had gathered to watch all looked worried. I heard about what happened in the Whitechapel district. They said the whole city guard was deployed. The sound of gunfire never stopped. Maybe we should just shut down for a while and lie low. The way I see it, things in New Haven are about to change. As people whispered among themselves, a few voices of suspicion emerged. Something's not right. Why are the city guard and the police suddenly taking orders from the second prince? What are the city administrators doing? This isn't his jurisdiction. It's like the entire city's military and police force have become his private army. I heard, just a rumor, that in the East End, the second prince is already having the royal mages arrest people, and they're only arresting those who oppose him. If you ask me, this assassination attempt on the king, maybe the second prince. Hey, now that you mention it, this whole situation feels just like 40 years ago. The capital was just like this back then. Think about how King Charlton came to power when he was young. Sure, stop talking. Do you have a death wish? These whispers inevitably reached the ears of some of the officers. Leon held his breath. Today's events were terrifying. He felt like his career with the NHBD was about to end along with Captain Raymond's. Though Raymond's maintained a cold expression, he was just as nervous. He knew that accepting the princess's promotion meant getting dragged into the capital's vortex. He just never thought it would happen so soon. A lowly inspector, now involved in a coup with the princess, he would never have dared to imagine it. He honestly missed the days of investigating cases with Leo. Suddenly, even those grotesque anomalies seemed less frightening than the princess's political enemies. With the factory owners now more compliant, the factories began to shut down one by one, and the wild rumors spread like wildfire through the West End and downtown. Just then, an officer rushed up to Raymond's. Captain, We just received an order to cease your operation immediately. The chief of police and the internal affairs inspector are waiting for you in their office. They want you back now. Raymond's froze, realizing his cover might be blown. The inspector was one of the second prince's men and his sworn enemy. He took a deep breath and replied grimly, "All right, I'm on my way." Returning to NHBD headquarters, Raymond's, flanked by 2 officers, knocked on the office door. "Come in." Inside, the chief of police and the inspector, his 2 direct superiors, stared at him with stern expressions. "You alone," the inspector said, glaring at the 2 officers behind him. Raymond's nodded and closed the door. "Raymond's, what the hell have you been doing?" the chief demanded, slamming his hand on the desk. "I told you to enforce the lockdown, not to spread rumors about His Majesty being assassinated. And I hear that's not all," the inspector said, his eyes narrowed. "Why have you been mentioning His Highness the Second Prince everywhere?" The kid's loose tongue was making it sound like the prince was plotting to seize control of the capital. "What?" Raymond's feigned innocence. "I haven't. I barely know the second prince. Why would I mention him?" Still denying it, the inspector sneered. "You think I don't have my own men in the force. And you may not know the second prince," but he smirked. "You're quite familiar with the 5th princess, aren't you? She put you up to this, didn't she?" Raymond's remained silent. He knew there was no point in arguing with them. "Well, Raymond's, you've got some nerve, playing games right under my nose," the chief growled. "As of today, you are suspended. Pull all your men back now." Hearing his rival was being demoted, the inspector smiled in satisfaction. He pressed on. "What else did the 5th princess order you to do?" "Was she plotting?" "Not talking," the inspector sneered. "Treason is a capital offense. Are you planning to answer me as a corpse?" "The one who's going to be a corpse isn't me. It's you," Raymond said with a shrug. "What did you say?" The inspector scoffed, but his smile lasted only a second. With a thunderous crash, the office door was blasted off its hinges. Director Fredericks of the BSI drove his fist through the inspector's head. It all happened in an instant. The chief's mouth hung open, his mind struggling to process the sight of the inspector's headless body, scarlet blood and white brain matter splattering across the wall behind him. You people," he stammered, looking from the intruder to Raymond's, then opened his mouth to shout. "Guards! Goo!" Fredericks snapped the chief's neck in the next second. Another body hit the floor. Holy hell! Even Raymond's was a bit shaken. He wiped the blood from his face. "I thought you guys lost your supernatural powers. How are you still so damn strong?" "The powers are gone, but that doesn't make us useless," Frederick said, glancing at him. "Even with just combat instinct, we can still kill incompetent fools like you. You don't have to be so harsh." Raymond's muttered, but he was used to it. On joint cases, the BSI had always looked down on the NHPD, complaining they were dead weight. "Who's the highest-ranking officer in the department now?" Fredericks asked. "In order, it's the chief, the inspector, the deputy inspector." Raymond's did the math. "I guess. I'm in charge now." "Good. That saved me some trouble." Fredericks's gaze fell on the office chair. "You're the chief of police now. Sit down and give the orders. With the NHPD under our control, it'll be easier to manage the narrative." Raymond's just nodded, not daring to sit in the chair where a man had just died. He looked out the window at the quiet street below. "This has gotten way out of hand," he muttered to himself. "If this fails, we're all dead. Leo, you'd better pull through on your end." 2 princes, one throne when the news from Captain Raymond's reached the old house. Ophelia finally allowed herself a small sigh of relief. She turned to the 2 vampires. "Raymond's and his men have secured the police headquarters. Miss Monica, Mr. Joe, now it's your turn." "To plant the evidence of William's treason?" Monica asked, glancing at the kneeling barbarian prince. "This needs to be done without leaving a trace," Ophelia instructed. "Rest assured," Joe said with a solemn nod. "Leave it to us." Monica couldn't help but smile. And just like that, our dear second prince becomes a traitor who invited foreign armies to invade, all in a plot to usurp the throne. He won't be able to wash this stain off, even if he jumps in a river. She had to admit, Ophelia's methods were vicious. It was truly unlucky to have her as an enemy. For the entire afternoon, Monica had quietly observed the 5th princess as she orchestrated the chaos from this secluded old house. With each order she gave, the situation in the capital subtly shifted, gradually falling under her control. This stunningly beautiful woman, playing with the levers of power from the pinnacle of society, was so captivating that even Monica found herself a little entranced. It was no wonder that Leo Kid was so completely wrapped around her finger. Monica began to worry about Evelyn's future. How could she possibly compete? That lazy woman was utterly outmatched. "Monica? Miss Monica?" Ophelia waved a hand in front of her face. What's wrong? She's going to lose. She's already lost. Monica mumbled. HM? Lose what? Ophelia looked at her, confused. This is just the beginning. Don't say such discouraging things. Oh no. Monica snapped back to reality. It's nothing, Joe, and I will head out now. Ophelia nodded. Thank you both again. Monica performed a formal aristocratic bow, her hand over her heart. You're most welcome. The Thornwood family has always been loyal to the Wigner royal family. It is a tradition passed down through generations. Of course, she didn't care which royal family it was, as long as the one on the throne was Ophelia herself. In the Whitechapel district, in a mansion behind the Grand Cathedral, the third prince stood on a balcony, watching the chaos on the streets below, his brow furrowed. After a hurried knock, a finely dressed, noble woman entered the room, escorted by guards. Kevin, what are you doing hiding here and enjoying the view at a time like this? Louise, what are you doing here? The third prince, Kevin asked, turning to his full sister, the fourth princess. She looked frantic and hadn't even bothered with makeup. How can I not be frantic? Princess Louise exclaimed. I heard William is about to rebel. Shouldn't you be making preparations? Just rumors, Kevin said. He had his own sources. He sneered. Father is perfectly fine in the palace. He's not gravely injured like the rumors say. As long as he's alive, how could William dare to rebel? I suspect someone is deliberately manipulating public opinion. Father's all right, Louise asked, surprised. Not only is he all right, Kevin narrowed his eyes. I suspect he's the one responsible for this strange domain over the capital. The Pope was taken back to the Grand Cathedral for treatment. I managed to squeeze some information out of him. If that's the case, Louise looked out the window, a name quickly surfacing in her mind. Ophelia, Kevin said with a sardonic smile. It's her, the thief crying thief. Is that girl insane? Where does she get the nerve? Louise couldn't believe Ophelia's audacity had grown so much. The little monster they used to torment was now capable of throwing the entire capital into turmoil. We all underestimated her. Kevin found himself thinking back many years, to the image of a small child locked in a woodshed, her red eyes filled with bone-deep hatred as she stared at them through a crack in the door while they laughed. She won't let us go. Louise seemed to recall some of those same memories, a shiver running down her spine. If I had known, we never should have let that little monster live. I tried. It was too late, Kevin said with a self-deprecating smile. Otherwise, I wouldn't be in this position. The old man stripped me of most of my power. We should side with William, Louise urged. Given the situation, it's going to be a fight to the death between Ophelia and William. But I think William has more troops. He has a better chance of winning. Fool. We side with no one, Kevin shot back. Or rather, we side with Father. The old man hid this ability from us for so long. That explains why he never cared about our infighting. He never saw our little squabbles as a threat. And do you really think William doesn't have ambitions of his own? The rumors about him are spreading everywhere now. He can't wash them away. He might just snap and lead the city guard in a real rebellion. Don't be fooled by his smiles. If he takes the throne, he'll be just like Ophelia. He won't spare me. So, as long as we stand with Father and wait for them to destroy each other, we'll be in an unbeatable position. After saying this, Kevin took a deep breath. There was another reason for siding with the king. He had always been terrified of his father. He glanced at the closed doors and windows and lowered his voice. Honestly, to this day, I still have my doubts about our older brother's death. I think Father might have had something to do with it. What did you say? Louise looked at him, her face a mask of disbelief. Meanwhile, Leo and Elia were dodging heavy fire from the city guard, weaving through the complex city blocks, getting closer and closer to Hager's palace. Leo, how much longer? Just as Elia spoke, Leo saw a shell with a blue tail arc through the air and land not far ahead of them. Get down, Leo yelled, pulling her back behind cover. With a deafening explosion, the wall shielding them cracked. Dust and smoke filled the air, making Leo cough. Not long. About 15 minutes to the rendezvous point, cough, cough. Elia patted his back while scanning the surrounding streets. Every place they passed was being blanketed by artillery fire, turning to rubble in an instant. The enemy's firepower was getting more intense. Most of the city guard is heading our way. 15 minutes might not be enough. Can't Helena come and get us? It's better if we go to her. She's having some trouble moving around right now. Trouble moving? Elia looked confused. You'll understand when you see her, Leo said grimly. Oh. After catching his breath, Leo carefully peeked out from behind their cover. Their journey had been perilous. If not for the labyrinthine streets, they would have been blown to bits by now. His eyes locked onto a tall clock tower ahead, the only suitable cover left. We need to make a run for it. From there, it's 2 more blocks north to the drawbridge. Elia nodded. I'm with you. Leo took a deep breath, braced himself, and sprinted out from behind the wall. To reach the clock tower, they had to cross a large, open square. He had expected a hail of gunfire the moment he broke cover, but by the time he and Elia reached the base of the tower, there wasn't a single shot. An eerie silence fell over the area. The steam Gundam scanning the unnervingly quiet surroundings. Leo and Elia exchanged a puzzled look. With me here, and our destination being the palace itself, the city guard wouldn't just give up, Elia said. But there's nothing? Did the witch take care of them? Leo asked, cautiously peeking out, trying to spot the soldiers through the thick dust. As long as the null magic field is active, the Magitech troops have the upper hand. There's no way they've all been wiped out, Elia added. So this silence means they're planning something. Maybe. The eerie quiet felt increasingly wrong. Leo's heart began to pound. Run. We can't stay here. Leo grabbed Elia's arm and dragged her forward, running blindly. Leo. Elia looked at him in surprise, her wrist held in his firm grip. The moment they cleared the clock tower, a brilliant blue light flared behind them. It was followed by a massive shockwave. The uncontrolled energy from a detonating Ethereum crystal felt like being hit by a freight train. Leo was thrown into the air, tumbling several times before crashing hard onto the ground. The blast left his ears ringing, and it was several moments before he could register Elia's frantic calls. Leo? Leo! Elia scrambled to pull the rubble off him. Are you all right? What happened? I'm fine. He coughed violently, a trickle of blood escaping his lips. You're not fine. You're coughing up blood. Elia anxiously checked him over. He had numerous cuts and scrapes and was covered in blood, but she couldn't find any serious external wounds. It must have been the explosion. It must have damaged your internal organs. You need treatment now. She immediately began to cast a divine spell, trying to draw on the faint remnants of her connection to her followers to heal him. Not here. We have to keep moving. Leo looked back. The explosion had completely leveled the ancient clock tower. Through the swirling dust, he could see armed soldiers searching the debris, heading their way. But your injuries? Elia's hair was a mess, her face etched with panic. As a former healing priestess, she knew what internal bleeding meant. It's just an internal injury. I won't die from it right away. Leo said through gritted teeth. If you want to save me, then help me take down Charlton and end this null magic field. I can heal myself then. Let's go. All right. Elia saw the soldiers closing in from all sides and nodded grimly. Then, she handed her mace, judgment, to Leo. Leo didn't understand. Hold this for me. Oh, okay. As Leo took the mace, Elia hoisted him on her back and began sprinting toward the drawbridge. Moments after they left, the second prince, William, led a cavalry unit into the ruins. Where are they? He roared, scanning the area. Even with that much firepower, there were no bodies. Saturation bombardment, and you still can't kill them? What use are you idiots? Your Highness, I've found them. A soldier with a spyglass shouted from a vantage point. They're almost at the drawbridge. They're moving fast. After them, William commanded coldly. Surround them. Do not let them enter the palace. Yes, sir. As the dust settled, William's vision cleared. He watched the running figure in the distance, a cold smile on his lips. There was only one way forward. With the royal guard inside the palace and his city guard outside, they were caught. They were already dead. Elia saw the moat and the massive drawbridge getting closer, but she didn't dare slow down. They both knew what the lull in the cannon fire meant. The city guard is likely using Magitech Mark II field cannons. The batteries are adjusting their aim. Leo said from her back, coughing again. We probably have. 10 seconds. Elia, faster. I know. Elia suddenly spread her white wings, unleashing every last bit of divine power she could muster. Their bodies lifted off the ground, gliding toward the drawbridge. Leo silently counted to 10. Just as he'd expected, the moment they were airborne, the ground below erupted in a series of blue explosions, the symbol of death. A full artillery barrage was even more spectacular than a battle between mages. The violent air currents buffeted them, but after the volley ended, they managed a shaky landing on the other side. Before them stood the magnificent bridge that had existed since the capital was founded. And on the other side of the bridge, waiting for them outside Hagra's palace, were rows of black muzzles. They were trapped, the royal guard in front, and behind them, the city guard cavalry thundering through the ruins. They stood back to back, watching the enemies close in from all sides. Elia gripped judgment tightly. Where's Helena? She asked in a low voice. You said she'd be waiting for us. Leo looked down at the wide moat. searching for something in the water. She's in the river. Ilya followed his gaze. A machine that big couldn't exactly stroll through the city, Leo explained. To avoid attention, she had to come all the way from downtown, underwater. What kind of machine is it? Ilya's curiosity grew. As they watched, the surface of the river began to bubble. Then, the water started to churn as if it were boiling, and a massive machine, far beyond anything Ilya had ever imagined, rose from the depths like a giant. This is... Ilya's eyes widened. The thing Tilly was researching. Leo watched the grand entrance of the colossal machine. Its body was made of heavy, dark metal, with exposed gears and rivets. Blue lights flickered across its frame as white steam hissed from its vents. It was covered in multiple rapid-fire turrets, and mounted on its back were 2 naval cannons of astonishing length and caliber. Rivets and steam. A fortress of steel. A monument to the supremacy of the turret. It was so damn cool. This was real steampunk. Leo smiled as he saw the adorable girl in the cockpit waving frantically at him. Its official designation is Fortress-class Magitech-powered weapon system, Test Unit 3. You can also call it the Steam Gundam. Ilya glanced down at the mace in her own hands. The times really had changed. Brother, I'm here to save you. Helena's voice boomed from a loudspeaker, echoing across the open space in front of the drawbridge. The Magitech core roared to life, and the Steam Gundam stomped onto the ground with a thunderous crash that nearly knocked Leo off his feet. Ilya quickly steadied him, noticing his complexion was getting worse. Let me heal you. Brother's hurt? The cockpit of the Steam Gundam swiveled around, and through the glass, Helena looked at Leo with alarm. Where are you hurt? Is it serious? I'm fine, Leo said, as a gentle white light enveloped him, easing the tightness in his chest. He looked up at the giant machine and commanded, Helena, clear a path. Okay, roger that. In the cockpit filled with countless buttons and levers, Helena consulted a manual the witch had written for her while manipulating the controls. The multiple turrets slowly swiveled, all aiming at the royal guards across the drawbridge. With a single volley, the royal guards were cut down, their screams echoing across the bridge. The palace, already damaged by the witch's earlier assault, crumbled further. Meanwhile, the city guard cavalry had arrived. The Steam Gundam's 2 remaining naval cannons were reserved for them. This is for bullying my brother. Helena's voice was filled with fury. Leo saw the cannons adjusting their angle and quickly warned Ilya to cover her ears. A split second later, a shock wave slammed into Leo. Even with his ears covered, his head rattled from the concussion. He looked into the distance. The 2 cannon blasts had annihilated the cavalry charge. In the vicinity of the 2 massive craters, there was barely anything left of the enemy. Protect His Highness, the Second Prince. The city guard's formation broke into chaos. The Second Prince was thrown from his startled horse and had to be helped up by his guards. He stared at the behemoth blocking the bridge, muttering in disbelief. What in the world is that?